The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242
or visit tomsbeets.com. It's the Free Speech TV membership drive. Today is Wednesday, and we are about $24,000 behind in what we need to be raising to keep this network on the air, to keep the lights on, to keep the electrons flowing, to keep this show in your home. And so any amount of help right now is really appreciated and really does help. A lot of small contributions is basically how we make this thing happen. Thousands and thousands of people giving $10, $20, $30, $50, something like that, $100, $200. There's a few very large donors, but they're few and far between. We had one $5,000 donor on the first day of the campaign, and thank you very much to that donor. But that's it so far. I mean, the vast majority. There have been a few $1,000 donors who want to come have lunch with Louise and me, and other than that, it is the small donors that make up this show, which is a good thing and a healthy thing. It's like diversity in an ecosystem. It's more broadly based, so it's more resilient. So please, if you're part of the 98% who have never donated to Free Speech TV, who have never joined Free Speech TV, who haven't become part of our family, take this opportunity to do so. This is a really pivotal time for progressive media. Conservative media has always had the backing of right-wing billionaires and big corporations, at least since the Powell memo in the early 70s. And increasingly, national public radio and public broadcasting systems are being taken over by right-wing billionaires who donate money to them, who dictate their programming content. David Koch, for example, killed a special about him that was supposed to be on PBS. And now you got right-wing think tanks that are constantly popping up on NPR all over the place, hyper-right politicians and whatnot. And there's no real balancing voices. How often do you hear Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren on NPR? Very rarely, if ever. So please call now, 877-378-8669, or Mark Pocan, for that matter. How often do you hear him on NPR? Please call, or anybody from the Congressional Progressive Caucus. They're just like, not good for advertisers or something. Is that the deal? 877-378-8669. Please call now. With a $30 gift, you get your choice of one of 4 bumper stickers, the Free Speech TV bumper sticker, the This Is Not Normal bumper sticker, the Elect a Clown and Expect a Circus bumper sticker, and Thom Hartmann University. With a $60 gift, you get the lapel pin from the Human Rights Campaign, Love Conquers Hate. With a $72 gift, you get all 4 of those bumper stickers that I mentioned just a moment ago. With a $120 gift, you get an autographed copy of my book, Unequal Protection, plus an autographed photo of me, the picture that Louise took with her camera in Cuba, in front of a picture of Fidel Castro. With that's with a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt. You get Building a Just World on the front and Standing in Unity on the back. You get the Human Rights Campaign Love Conquers Hate lapel pin. You get an autographed copy of my book, Unequal Protection. This is my book about how the Supreme Court basically took away our rights and enthroned corporations as the legal rulers of America. And you get Bonnie Siegler's book, Signs of Resistance, A Visual History of Protest in the United States. That's with a $240 gift. With a $360 gift, you get the autographed Thom Hartmann photo in Cuba. You get the autographed book by me, Unequal Protection. You get the book When They Call You a Terrorist. This is the story of the lives of Black Lives Matter people by Patrice Kahn-Kollers. You get the book Signs of Resistance, A Visual History of Protest in America by Bonnie Siegler. You get a one-year subscription to our podcast, our audio podcast, which you can listen to anytime, anywhere, on pretty much any device. We sell those over at thomhartmann.com. It's one of the ways we support the show. We are giving them away with a $360 gift to Free Speech TV. You get a year's podcasts. And you also get all four of the bumper stickers that we mentioned earlier. This Is Not Normal, Elect a Clown, Expect a Circus, the Free Speech TV one, and the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $480 gift, and just with a $480 gift, we've got a special treat. When Louise and I were in Cuba, we took a lot of video of just all kinds of cool stuff. This is all done by me with a little handheld camera that I picked up at the store just before we left. And it's not going to be available anywhere else. We're not going to put it on the air. It's not going to be for sale. It's the only way you can get this is with a $480 gift to Free Speech TV now, and 877-378-8669. In addition to that DVD, you will also get my book Unequal Protection, my book about the Supreme Court. You get the book When They Call You a Terrorist, Lives of Black Lives Matter by Patrice Kahn-Kollers. You get the book Signs of Resistance, A Visual History of Protest in America by Bonnie Siegler. And you get the gray Free Speech TV t-shirt. And with a $1,000 gift, if you call now, 877-378-8669, and make a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. You can drop by the studio here. We had a few people last Friday. It was just great. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you, broadcasting on commercial radio stations from coast to coast on Sirius. And by the way, we just picked up a new station in Honolulu, Hawaii. We will be doing our show from there in a couple of weeks for a few days. On Sirius XM all across the United States and North America. On Pacifica Radio, on every U.S. military base in the world, and of course on Dish and Direct via Free Speech TV. We're all over the place. And so happy to be with you. Congressman Mark Pocan is on the line with us. It's the first hour of our Wednesday program. And therefore, Middays with Mark, Congressman Pocan, you can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan, MarkPocan, or his website is pocan.house.gov. Congressman, welcome back.
Thanks, Tom. Glad to be here.
Great to have you with us. So, any broad thoughts about what's going on this week in Congress or in the country or the world as a whole that you'd like to comment on before we start picking up phone calls?
Sure. Well, I mean, one, I think we're all waiting to see if we can finally get this omnibus done. What was supposed to have been done a year ago to get funding through September 30th. The deadline is coming up this week. Once again, Congress can't get anywhere because the Republicans don't know how to govern. I think we'd be better off with a room full of monkeys and a typewriter and maybe an abacus, and you could get a omnibus done faster than these folks are operating. But I think we'll have something done this week. The details are still a little bit fuzzy, but by the time we get it, we will probably have a very, very large budget with about 12 hours to review, which is just, again, what a terrible process. It's because the Republicans don't know what they're doing. So that's kind of the big thing that's shadowing most of the week. Yesterday we had Betsy DeVos in my subcommittee. That's always interesting, having her there. I've never seen anyone so evasive on answers, and not because they're intentionally evasive, because she often just doesn't have the answers.
She just seems clueless. I don't mean to ridicule somebody, but she just comes across as clueless. Is she really that uninformed or poorly informed or misinformed, or what's going on?
She knows one thing, and that one thing only, that she believes that we should take public dollars and put them into private schools, the so-called choice or voucher programs.
Right.
Beyond that, she really doesn't have a deep amount of knowledge in anything else in education. So Even asking her about guns. I mean, remember she had her famous statement about needing guns in schools because there could be grizzlies. And I did have to ask her if she still thinks that we need guns in schools to protect us from grizzlies. And she has changed her opinion on that. But that's kind of the level of conversation you get with Betsy DeVos, which is a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
And then finally, I think the last thing just worth mentioning is there was a big fundraiser the Republicans had with President Trump last night here in town, and he said he's going to go around the country and campaign for Republicans. And I think there was a lot of silence and deep swallowing going on.
They didn't applaud that line?
Well, I think privately they know when he comes behind the scenes and does fundraisers, that's good for them. But when he does public events, maybe not so good these days. And so I thought, I encourage the president to get around and do as many of these support rallies as he can for Republicans across the country.
Amazing. Yeah, get out there, Donald.
Exactly.
On the one hand. On the other hand, every time he does it, all the cable TV networks go to full-time Donald coverage. I mean, there's a great piece in the New York Times today about how, forget Cambridge Analytica, Donald Trump hacked the media. He presented himself as a competent, smart, savvy businessman for 11 years on Celebrity Apprentice, which he isn't. And then that image of him was used to sell him. And then he got $2 billion worth of free time during the primary by running a reality show, by basically hacking television. I mean, Cambridge Analytica obviously did some really nasty stuff, but, without $2 billion worth of free TV time, or had Bernie, for example, or even Hillary had that $2 billion worth of free time during the, 2015 and early 2016, Donald Trump would not be president.
Yeah, and every day it was dominant, no matter what hour of the day he was on TV, and they were covering him. And now, of course, we know what that's brought us. So
yeah. Well, let's hope our. Although the media seems not to have learned from that, because every time he gives a speech, they just go to the speech. I mean, they did this yesterday or the day before. It's just this is crazy. Anyhow, Congressman, you want to pick up some phone calls here?
Sure.
Okay, let's go for it. Jesse in Miami, Florida. You are on the air with Congressman Mark Pocan.
Hey, hi, Mr. Pocan. I hope you, this is just a quick one. I hope you're studying Bernie Sanders because you're probably following in his footsteps. That town hall he gave Monday was historic. But let me get to the point. Hey, if I was on that panel with Bernie this Monday, I would have asked the question, political power comes from economical power. Why don't we take control of the Federal Reserve? Because there we have collateralization with no representation. So the basic question is, Mr. Pocan, how can Congress and the people take back their treasury? That's it.
Collateralization with no representation. I love that, Jesse. Congressman?
Well, Jesse, I tell you, I agree with you that, economics are the central issue. I'm not sure if most people are talking about the Federal Reserve when they're at their kitchen table. So if we really want to engage with voters about what they're talking about, because they don't live and die politics like all of us, really kind of, spend a lot more time than most people do on politics, we have to talk about the issues that they care about. And I would argue we saw this in Connor Lamb's election. We saw this in the special elections for state legislatures across the country. People talk about, can they afford their mortgage or rent? Can they send their kids to college if they want to go? Can they take a family vacation? Do they have health care? Do they have a pension? Those are the sort of economic issues. So I completely agree with you, Jesse. Those issues are vital, and Bernie Sanders, better than almost anyone, although I'd argue Elizabeth Warren is very close, to cover those issues in the right way, and that's why they make people care and relevant to what they talk about. So I think those are the issues that we really need to focus on the most, and we kind of have to all make ourselves remember that, because sometimes I know we all have special issues we care about. We might have a very specific opinion on something, but unless we're talking in the biggest, broadest way about those issues that the average person who we need to get out and vote care about, we're really not talking to that voter. So you're absolutely right. It's on economics. I would just say let's make it as populist as possible on economics, and let's also not forget Social Security and Medicare.
Catherine in El Macero, California. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi. I actually live in Davis.
Okay.
But our zip code's changed. Anyway, I had a question about the job offer that Representative Pocan made to Andrew McCabe, and I was wondering if Andrew McCabe took him up on the job offer so that he can keep his pension.
Yeah, Katrin, thanks for bringing it up. I was going to bring it up in the beginning, and I don't have an answer yet. We've talked to his folks. I think he's got actually now multiple offers, but more importantly, he's also involved in a lawsuit over the firing. So on Friday night, the president had the attorney general fire Andrew McCabe literally 26 hours before his retirement to try to take away his ability to have his full pension. And, growing up in a lower middle class family, I mean, you don't mess with people's futures, right? This was the president trying to be a thug. He was trying to send a message: if you screw with him, if you go talk to Mueller, because he's so desperate to derail this investigation, if you talk to Mueller, he's going to not just destroy you, but your family and your future. And part of that is your pension. So we couldn't let that happen. So the first thing when I read that Saturday morning, I'm like, no, you know what? I will hire him. We will get him across the finish line if that's what he needs, if that's what's going to work for him. And I don't care if it's me or whoever he works for. You shouldn't lose your pension, because Donald Trump was trying to send a message that anyone who does this, he will go after. And I think we were able to show there are checks and balances in the system. We checked him. The president won't hopefully get his way. We have given some options to Andrew McCabe, and now really the ball is in his court along with the lawsuit he has. So I think the important thing for the public is we proved once again the president, because he lacks human decency, it's a huge character flaw he has, he still can't win when he wants to be a mafioso thug. When he wants to be Vladimir Putin, we're not going to let him.
Yeah, there you go. He's I was on Fox on Sunday talking about this, and I said basically this was the Trump crime family's way of saying if you mess with us, we will destroy you. And they just went nuts. I think the guy's head exploded when I said Trump crime family. Anyhow, we're back with Congressman Mark Pocan in just a moment. It's Middays with Mark. Your calls for the congressman.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Congressman Pocan's website, Pocan, POCAN.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep, R-E-P, as in Representative, Rep Mark Pocan. And welcome back. Ruben in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Hey, Ruben, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. You are on the air with Congressman Mark Pocan.
How you doing, Tom?
Good.
Great.
You're on the air with Congressman Pocan, Ruben.
Yes, I just had to holler at you because you do such a great job.
Thank you.
But when I'm wondering about this, Mr. Pocan gonna run for president because he don't know how many people are backing him. This is from Florida.
Okay.
Hey, Ruben,
we got to be positive about this. Very positive about it, because we could win. This man going down. Thank you, Pat.
Okay, thank you, Ruben.
Hey, Ruben, thank you, and that's very kind of you. I think that we are probably going to be blessed with many, many good candidates by the time this thing is done, and I think we can defeat Donald Trump if he's still president in 4 years. I'm still hopeful that the Mueller investigation and whatever they wind up uncovering and sharing with us will be enough to make sure that we don't have to have 4 full years of this guy as president. But, I think the most important thing is it's not necessarily about who, but that we're moving in a direction that we can take back the Congress this November, take back the White House in 2020, and put us back in a position to deal with all the really giant issues we got to face, from untangling what Donald Trump has tangled to, dealing with things like health care and raising the minimum wage and making people's lives better. So I think we're going to be in a good position, but let's get through 2018 and let's just make sure we all continue to stay woke. It's so important.
You're doing good, by the way. It was at least the 4th or 5th year that Bernie had been on this show every Friday that people started calling in and saying, when are you going to run for president? So that's a good sign. Keith in Landrum, South Carolina, watching Free Speech TV. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, Congressman. Tom was talking about a poison pill in the omnibus spending bill yesterday. I forgot what it was about. My poison pill is...
It was an online sales tax, I think.
Yeah, online sales tax. You can't go to a mom and pop store today without seeing that they have a web page or that they're on Facebook, and to make them uncompensated tax collectors for all 50 states is just it's bad. And 95% of all online purchases collect sales tax. Now, we do not need this legislation added into this.
Congressman?
Yeah, Keith, I hear what you're saying. I don't know what's in the omnibus yet, and I think anyone who says definitively this or that may not necessarily know either. So I serve on the Appropriations Committee. We've had some fairly regular updates. We started out with 160 poison pill riders. Then it was down to 50 poison pill riders. This morning, Nancy Pelosi told us it's down to 1, maybe 1.5 poison pill riders. But I'm also hearing some other information about why we're still having holdups. So I can't definitively say what is in it or not in it. That could be the problem. And the problem is by the time we actually get it, because they fast-tracked it, because we're right on the deadline once again, we're going to have at best 12 hours to review whatever is in there, which is always an awful, awful way to govern. So
it's $1 trillion. It's more than $1 trillion.
$1 trillion, 1.2 in 12 hours. So what is that? $100 billion an hour.
The online, but just FYI, my position on the online sales tax is that it is unfair competition. If Amazon doesn't have to pay sales tax, and the guy down the street who's got a retail store does have to pay sales tax, or does have to charge sales tax rather, I think it should be universally applied. But anyhow,
agreed.
Agreed. Good. Thank you. We'll be back. More of your calls for Congressman Pocan right after this. It's Middays with Mark. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. 202-808-9925 is our telephone number. Russell in Hickory Hills, Illinois, listening to WCPT. You are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, Mr. Pocan, it's nice to talk to you. Well, if you need some money, you can always come to Illinois for our governor's race. But I was wondering if you can confirm or deny a rumor I heard on TV and radio that they're going to try to ram another $500 billion up to $1 trillion in tax cuts before midterms. So when they lose the House, they're going to blame you guys for the debt. Have you heard another tax cut is coming?
Yeah, the only thing I've heard very loosely was the president say they've got more tax cuts they want to do. But, this last round has landed like a thud for them. They really thought they had a springboard to run on to save. This is their Hail Mary to try to save themselves for November. And instead, everyone is so much smarter than they think people are and have got it. When Paul Ryan tweeted out and then got rid of the tweet that someone got an extra $1.50 in their paycheck, and they know that the Koch brothers and everyone else got hundreds of millions, they know that 83% of that money in 10 years is going to the top 1%. It wasn't done for any real person in this country. So I think they're going to have a very hard time trying to push something forward. It was the one issue they could unify behind, but now that we're getting closer to the election and that one didn't work, Russell, my opinion, it would be very difficult to do that.
I think the jig is up. We all got fooled by Reagan, and as George W. Bush said so brilliantly, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, don't get fooled again.
Exactly.
and people are not getting fooled again. So, okay, Marlon in Chicago, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, Congressman, how you doing?
Hey, very good, Marlon. How are you?
Great. How you doing, Tom?
Good. What's up?
I watched the Bernie forum, and the one thing it was a great forum. I think they did a great job. But the one thing I noticed was the absence of the native Black American male. They showed white women, white men, Hispanic men, women, single Black women, single Black mothers. And they showed a Black male who happened to be Congolese that was a doctor who couldn't find a living wage job here in America. But the native Black male was completely absent from the narrative. And to me, that's a problem. It seems as if showing the Black male as vulnerable and as a victim is just not something America's willing to do. And they only talk about our victimization when it comes to incarceration or our deaths. And I just think that's a serious problem that America has to deal with.
Yeah, I hear you. It's a very valid and strong point. I can tell you we just did some polling for the Progressive Caucus, and we wanted to test some messages and also test race in some messages. And when we tested around a message that was inclusive, when you said for white, brown, and black people, it actually polled way up there. And this is in swing districts, because the poll was 30 swing districts that we did around the country, and then some progressive surge voters, not regular progressive voters. But those messages really resonated. So again, the people get this, that not everyone has been able to be the beneficiary of what's happened with economics, especially under Trump. I mean, it's been very, very small number of people, and we need to be far more inclusive. And I think by us testing that language showed people that you can talk about race and economics, and people get it, that not everyone has been the beneficiary. So hopefully we'll be able to get more and more people talking about it in a better and smarter way.
Dave in Buffalo, New York. We have about 2 minutes to the break. Dave, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Mark, Tom, thank you very much. And don't fool me again as a funny line. And thank you. Mark, I'd like to offer you a way that the American people can have an increase in their minimum wage from $7 an hour to $22 an hour, and it will not cost a penny out of corporate profit. And it's this way. Corporations get corporate welfare. It's actually more than $2,000 per man, woman, and child. But if it was, that would be $650 billion that they get in corporate welfare. If we pull back just less than 0.14% out of corporate welfare and plug it into minimum wage, we would be able to raise the minimum wage from $7 an hour to $22 an hour. It will not cost them one penny in corporate profit, and then they will actually benefit, because we'll be spending more money. If you increase my pay by like $600 a week, I'll be able to afford an increase of a hamburger going up 50 cents.
Right. So let's ask Congressman Pocan. By the way, in 1949, Harry Truman doubled the minimum wage. He took it from 45 to 90 cents, as I recall. Anyhow, Congressman?
Yeah.
Yeah, it went from 40 cents to 75 cents, in 1949. He just about doubled the minimum wage. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Dave, so on the math, I mean, there are a couple issues I have, just because some of the corporate subsidies don't affect small business and all the rest. However, I agree with your basic premise 100%, which is if you raise the minimum wage significantly, you put that money immediately back into the economy. You improve people's lives so they don't have to have 2 or 3 minimum wage jobs. They can actually spend some time with their family. But more importantly, that money is not going into a savings account for your next yacht. It is going directly into, you're going to a restaurant, you're going to a movie theater, you're buying a new piece of clothes, and that stimulates the economy. So that is absolutely the way we should be focused on.
Yeah, amen. Congressman Mark Pocan with us. It's our Middays with Mark show here, the first hour of Wednesday every week. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls at the Thom Hartmann Program. You can check out his website at pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at @RepMarkPocan.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan right after this. It's the Free Speech TV membership drive. Today is Wednesday, and we are about $24,000 behind in what we need to be raising to keep this network on the air, to keep the lights on, to keep the electrons flowing, to keep this show in your home. And so any amount of help right now is really appreciated and really does help. A lot of small contributions is basically how we make this thing happen. Thousands and thousands of people giving $10, $20, $30, $50, something like that, $100, $200. There's a few very large donors, but they're few and far between. We had one $5,000 donor on the first day of the campaign, and thank you very much to that donor. But you know, that's it so far. I mean, the vast majority. There have been a few $1,000 donors who want to come have lunch with Louise and me, and other than that, it is the small donors that make up this show, which is a good thing, and a healthy thing. You know, it's like diversity in an ecosystem. You know, it's more broadly based, so it's more resilient. So please, if you're part of the 98% who have never donated to Free Speech TV, who have never joined Free Speech TV, who haven't become part of our family, take this opportunity to do so. This is a really pivotal time for progressive media. Conservative media has always had the backing of right-wing billionaires and big corporations, at least since the Powell memo in the early 70s. And increasingly, national public radio and public broadcasting systems are being taken over by right-wing billionaires who donate money to them, who dictate their programming content. David Koch, for example, killed a special about him that was supposed to be on PBS. And now you got right-wing think tanks that are constantly popping up on NPR all over the place, hyper-right politicians and whatnot. And there's no real balancing voices. How often do you hear Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren on NPR? Very rarely, if ever. So please call now, 877-378-8669, or Mark Pocan, for that matter. How often do you hear him on NPR? Please call, or anybody from the Congressional Progressive Caucus. They're just like, you know, not good for advertisers or something. Is that the deal? 877-378-8669. Please call now. With a $30 gift, you get your choice of one of 4 bumper stickers, the Free Speech TV bumper sticker, the This Is Not Normal bumper sticker, the Elect a Clown and Expect a Circus bumper sticker, and Thom Hartmann University. With a $60 gift, you get the lapel pin from the Human Rights Campaign, Love Conquers Hate. With a $72 gift, you get all 4 of those bumper stickers that I mentioned just a moment ago. With a $120 gift, you get an autographed copy of my book, Unequal Protection, plus an autographed photo of me, the picture that Louise took with her camera in Cuba, in front of a picture of Fidel Castro. With that's with a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt. You get Building a Just World on the front and Standing in Unity on the back. You get the Human Rights Campaign Love Conquers Hate lapel pin. You get an autographed copy of my book, Unequal Protection. This is my book about how the Supreme Court basically took away our rights and enthroned corporations as the legal rulers of America. And you get Bonnie Siegler's book, Signs of Resistance, A Visual History of Protest in the United States. That's with a $240 gift. With a $360 gift, you get the autographed Thom Hartmann photo in Cuba. You get the autographed book by me, Unequal Protection. You get the book, When They Call You a Terrorist. This is the story of the lives of Black Lives Matter people by Patrice Kahn-Kollers. You get the book, Signs of Resistance, A Visual History of Protest in America by Bonnie Siegler. You get a 1-year subscription to our podcast, our audio podcast, which you can listen to anytime, anywhere, on pretty much any device. We sell those over at thomhartmann.com. It's one of the ways we support the show. We are giving them away with a $360 gift to Free Speech TV. You get a year's podcasts. And you also get all 4 of the bumper stickers that we mentioned earlier. This Is Not Normal, Elect a Clown, Expect a Circus, the Free Speech TV one, and the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $480 gift, and just with a $480 gift, we've got a special treat. When Louise and I were in Cuba, we took a lot of video of just all kinds of cool stuff. This was all done by me with a little handheld camera that I picked up at the store just before we left. And it's not going to be available anywhere else. We're not going to put it on the air. It's not going to be for sale. It's the only way you can get this is with a $480 gift to Free Speech TV now. And 877-378-8669. In addition to that DVD, you will also get my book, Unequal Protection, my book about the Supreme Court. You get the book, When They Call You a Terrorist, Lives of Black Lives Matter by Patrice Kahn-Kollers. You get the book, Signs of Resistance, A Visual History of Protest in America by Bonnie Siegler. And you get the gray Free Speech TV t-shirt. And with a $1,000 gift, if you call now, 877-378-8669, and make a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. You can drop by the studio here. We had a few people last Friday, which is great. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you. Welcome back. It's Middays with Mark. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls. James in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan. James? No James. Let's try David in Columbus, Ohio, listening on WGRN. Hey, David, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
I have a quick question on the budget. The budget's the heart of the issue. I think Republicans want to cut all domestic spending and put everything into the Defense Department and other things where they can capitalize on investments. But I'd like to know if the progressive budget, by the progressive Democrats, varies from the Democratic budget in general, and if there is any resolution to that in order to gain effectiveness in the election.
Good question.
Yeah, David, great question. So every year we put together our version of what we call the people's budget. We do cut defense spending. We reprioritize significantly on what the spending is. And at the end of the day, actually, we do better than generally the Democratic or the Republican versions of the budget on even reducing the deficit in the middle of doing all these new investments and things because of how we prioritize our spending. And I think, one of the things that you said that really rung to this particular omnibus is because they put so much additional money in defense. I've actually been told that the Department of Defense doesn't even know exactly how to spend all the money that they've been given extra because there is still a process to do it. You can't do it irresponsibly, and yet that's exactly what was set up. So this wasn't done with any forethought or actual significant thought behind it. This is just done to put more money into defense, more money going to defense contractors, but even the professionals don't know how to actually put it out there wisely, which, again, is just part of the difficulty we've had with this president and this Congress and why there needs to be a change.
Dan in Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, I was wondering if you gentlemen saw the Esquire Jack Holmes article today about a Fox commentator, Ralph Peters.
No, I didn't see it.
He refused to renew his contract with Fox as a paid commentator because he said, and he's been with them for 10 years, and he said it's because the network has become a propaganda machine. It's not actually a television network anymore, or words to that effect. Is that right, Dan? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, do you think it's significant that some of his old workmates told him something and he's getting off the ship?
Oh, because he was a national security guy, wasn't he?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Congressman?
Yeah, I'll say I've never considered Fox News to be credible to begin with. I don't think it was ever intended to be as a network. I think it was a brilliant strategy by conservatives to try to, again, delude actual news. But I think any time we have someone come from that perspective and say that, and so many people who seem to be Trump supporters get where they do get their news, I think it's helpful, right? At some point, we've got to get beyond this fake news, narrative that I think the president's been pretty successful at, and get back to, there has to be some place we go as an arbitrator of facts. It always was until, very, very recently. And Fox News never was intended to be that. So hopefully this is going to wake some people up.
Cheryl in Wilsonville, Oregon. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
This is Cheryl Cooper Radcliffe.
Mm-hmm. You're on the air.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about the harvest box with Mr. Pocan, if possible. My comment specifically is toward I have a lot of medical problems that have to have a specific diet. How is this going to work into harvest boxes?
Is this the idea around the SNAP that they're going to give you like the Blue Apron foods instead of the normal SNAP program?
Well, I don't consider it Blue Apron. I consider it Abundant Foods, which is the program.
I don't think
the program prior to food stamps.
Right, sure. I don't think this is going to fly ultimately. I know that since I've been here, they've attacked the SNAP program, and you've actually gotten less money as opposed to increase with inflation. And, I lived on it for a week to try to, help show what that was when it was $31.50 a week. Now it's more like $28 a week in assistance. No one's getting rich on this. This is one of the best programs to keep kids out of poverty that we have in the country. And when that idea got put out there, it was largely ridiculed. I was supposed to have a hearing this afternoon with Secretary Perdue from Agriculture. That was one of the questions that we were hoping to get to, but it got canceled because we have this big snowstorm in Washington, and in Washington, if you get an inch of snow, you close the town down. But I believe that most recognize this as a pretty ridiculous way to try to address the issue they had. But again, Donald Trump and ridiculous just go in common so often. It's become a norm around here.
Yeah, tragically. Karen in Portland, Oregon, listening on X-Ray FM. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning, Tom and Congressman Pocan. Great excerpt from 7 Ways to Think Like a 21st Century Economist. My question for Congressman Pocan is, Congressman, do you really think that abortion is simply a cultural issue and not an economic issue as well? Last week, you said something to the effect that it was a cultural issue, and that was upsetting to me because obviously if you have a baby, you have to take care of the baby. You have to raise the child. That's economics, and I don't see how it appeals to anyone but maybe 1 out of 5 evangelicals, maybe, to talk about abortion as a side issue or not an issue at all for you. I think it's very demeaning to women to see things that way. We're over 50% of the population. And if you don't stick up for women and children and all the other, quote, special issues, whether it's racial justice or LGBTQ issues or any number of other issues, then I don't think Democrats will win either. Economics is really important. I used to be a union organizer.
Karen, your point is made. Let's let the congressman respond.
Yeah, Karen, your point is made. Unfortunately, it's misfired because I wasn't saying it's a culture issue. We have to ignore it. What I'm saying is what people talk about at their kitchen table are what affects them personally, right? It's an advertising, just to say you. So what people care about the most is just they don't think about politics and live and breathe politics. They think about getting by economically and having opportunity for their family. And, of course, that could be an issue. If you have a kid, you've changed your economic condition significantly. I'm an openly gay man. Of course I care about those issues. But if you really want to bring in people to follow politics, you have to talk to them, and the issues they talk about at their kitchen table are economic issues. If their economics are based around having children, of course that's going to be a significant issue. And I'm not saying you ever downplay those issues. I sometimes people hear things, Tom, and frustrating to me is they want to find a reason to fight all the time rather than realizing in some cases we have to just be as smart as possible going into an election cycle that's as important as this cycle is. And we have to bring in those voters. So far, we've been successful in all these state legislative races. 39 races have flipped from Republican to Democrat, only 4 the other way. But we've got to keep talking about things that bring voters out. So in no way am I dismissing those as issues we should talk about, but I'm saying the way you engage a voter about issues like choice and why it's important and LGBT rights and the environment and everything else is by engaging them on what they talk about first and foremost, and that's their core economic existence. And once we have that conversation, we can open up a lot of other conversations, Karen.
Can we pay the mortgage? Can we put food on the table? Can we take a vacation? Can our kids go to school? This is the bottom line stuff. Woody in Ithaca, New York. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan. Thanks for listening to WRFI.
Hello.
Hey, Woody. You're on the air.
Okay. My question primarily has to do with the corruption and greed that capitalism has created in this country. And primarily, I think, originator of that, or, well, Citizens United. Do you know if anybody has written in layman's language any kind of explanation as how the Supreme Court could come up with such a plan? And I heard you earlier mention the billions needed for an election. Why? That should not be permitted at all. Something has to change.
Okay, Woody, your phone is just terrible. It's really hard to understand what you're saying. But Citizens United in Capitalism. By the way, he asked if anything's been written. I wrote a book about Citizens United in Capitalism. It's called Unequal Protection: The Rise of Corporate Dominance. And just, you know, not to just plug it, but it's actually got some good information in it. Anyhow, back to you, Congressman.
Yeah, and Woody, I guess what I would say, just to add to what Tom said, I think, you know, there are there's some good information out there explaining it. We have to just be, you know, smart enough to use the simple information, right, in explaining it. But the good news, again, is people get this issue. I just saw some polling from the group End Citizens United that's doing a tremendous amount of work around this issue. People understand this issue area more than ever before, and they connect it to the powerful special interests, Wall Street and corporations. And the more we can make those connections, people understand what they're up to and that they are a disrupting influence. I mean, let's face it, the whole Drain the Swamp by Donald Trump was a masterful way to try to misdirect you from the fact that he is building a high-rise condo on the swamp. And all he's done is add more swamp creatures here to benefit the top 1%. But people get it. So we're seeing some really great polling on this issue right now, and we should all be really, really heartened by the fact that people want disclosure and a lot of other things around campaign finance reform.
Yeah, Citizens United is as toxic as it gets.
Absolutely.
Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. It's Middays with Mark on the Thom Hartmann Program, talking back to mainstream media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. You can tweet Congressman Pocan at Rep. Mark Pocan. His website is pocan.house.gov. We'll be back with more of your calls for him.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
More Middays with Mark right after this. And welcome back. Chuck in Mosier, Oregon, watching us on Dish Network, Free Speech TV. Chuck, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Gentlemen, good
Sir.
morning.
Hey, Chuck.
And just a comment on Mr. Olson. I'm glad he didn't take that case because he could probably argue Trump through this thing. My point is that I'm thinking maybe, you know, everybody hates when commercials come on, and I know that some of them are good. I'm wondering why the Democratic Party, or not why, but maybe it's a good idea for the Democratic Party to get some good spots together for commercials. And I noticed that on Free Speech, I saw one that was a animated thing that came out of Portland to start with. It's about getting out into the park and getting into the forest, and it's a Manji character or something like that. And I think that, you know, if they just worked on that and started out on, you know, free speech.
Yeah, those are public service announcements, not ads. But
public service announcements that just kind of catch people that, you know, they want to go turn it off, but they don't. And when they hear it playing, they just, you know, they just kind of forget about it. But it still sticks in their mind like these ridiculous jingles and commercials do, but without putting people down or anything. Just advertise the party and what we stand for. Social Security, Medicare, freedom for all. And
yeah, Chuck, it sounds to me like what you're describing is, I used to run 2 different ad agencies, and is the difference between product sales and company branding, and that the DNC needs to brand itself. Congressman, your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
Excuse me.
You know, I think one of the things I've heard Keith Ellison talk about a lot is trying to get some of this done. I think that the only thing I might ask you to think about, Chuck, is, you know, in an era where we have a lot of consultants who make a lot of money from placing 30-second ads, and it's hard to put a lot of content into 30 seconds, I think what Keith and Tom Perez and others have tried to focus on is how do we bring this out to the grassroots and have actual conversations with people so that we're actually moving people and making them understand that what they believe in, because we know this from all the polls, they believe in the issues that Democrats have. We just have to make sure we're connecting that, and we need to do a lot more grassroots conversations I would argue. So I'm not saying you can't do what you're saying, because I do think we need to brand better. I just think that I would hate to say that what we want to do is just more 30-second spots, when in reality we need to have people knocking on doors, not just at election time, and engaging people because they're with us. We just need to make sure that they know that.
The Reagan campaign was, as I recall, quite spectacularly successful in promoting the idea that the Republican Party was now the party of new ideas. And to the point that I remember old, Face the Nation shows where they'd get a Republican congressman on and say, well, you're from the party of new ideas. What's your latest idea? Oh, yeah, we need to privatize Medicare or whatever, We have about 10 seconds here. Any ideas of a slogan for the Democratic Party that might have that kind of cachet?
Maybe it's not a slogan, but from what we just polled, everyone across the board, politically spectrum, want us to be bold and not timid in our responses. And I think, just us being more bold would be valuable. Bold progressives. That's Adam Green's thing, his right.
The Progressive Change Campaign Committee, the PCCC. That's a good one. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls. We'll be back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan in just a moment. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Middays with Mark segment, Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls. Maureen in St. Louis, Missouri. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan, the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, hi, guys. I just want to say thanks to the congressman. I loved your move the other day to the agent, or McCabe, that got fired from the FBI. How you offered him a job so he could keep his pension. And I was just wondering, did he take you up on that?
Yeah, so we talked about it at the beginning of the hour. I think he has several offers, but more importantly, he has a lawsuit that he could very likely win. So I think he's weighing all options. But the bottom line, and I think it's really worth reinforcing, Maureen, is the president in his rich, smug way tried to go after people by saying, I'm not just going to hurt you, but I'm going to hurt your family and your future. And that's when he went after the pension. And this is where, people across the board are worried about retirement security. This is why, he is devoid of human decency. I don't think anyone wants cruelty to be a part of what you are as a president, yet this is a very cruel president. So we needed to come out with it right away. I'm glad others have as well, and I think, the message really got out there. I've had more conservatives, people who support law enforcement, thank me for their doing it, because they know that was the wrong sign. I mean, he's just trying to thug people because he's a rich guy and doesn't have to worry about it, but most people have to worry about their pension. So I think Andrew McCabe will be taken care of, whether it's through me or someone else. I don't necessarily care. I just want to make sure that no one has to be afraid to talk to Mueller or anyone else or do the right thing because they're afraid of their financial security, because that's just the worst thug-like behavior possible.
Yeah. Robert in Ithaca, New York, listening on WRFI. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, people on SSI have an upper limit of how much money they're going to have, which is $2,000. When are we going to make it, or the Democratic Party going to make a stand for limits on wealth for rich people and get rid of the billionaires and the millionaires, maybe $20 million or something like that? That sounds like something that would be a real, something the Democrats could really stand for.
Yeah, I think the way that we've usually approached this, Richard, through the Progressive Caucus is, through our progressive tax system that we have. I mean, we used to have it at a point where people who made a lot of money paid a lot bigger percent of that, and that really addressed the issue. Now we're seeing, and Thom has done a great job of covering this billionaire class and how, what this has done to not just the economy, but to society in general. So, we have a number of provisions that we put out in our budget every year that would have a much higher rate of taxes on those who make more, which is, I think, very reasonable and a rational way to try to approach the issue. And we'll put it out again in our version of budget this year. But I think Thom has done some really great work. Very recently, Thom, you have on this idea of billionaires and what that means to society.
Yeah, I've been trying to get the hashtag morbidly rich trending. But yeah, thank you. Bruce in Clinton, Iowa, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, Tom and Congressman, proudly represented down here by Dave Loebsack. And glad to get to talk to you for the first time. Say, what I want to ask you about is this 4th of July parade that the president wants, well, largely so he can stand there and have people march by and salute him and look good on TV. I think it's a waste of money. I think a lot of people do. At a time we really shouldn't be spending money on something this frivolous. Can Congress just pull the plug and say, hey, we're not going to fund it and it won't happen?
Yes, we could do something about it. Will Paul Ryan or Mitch McConnell, who don't really understand that we're a separate co-equal branch of government, do that is another question. But we're going to keep pushing it. I know Barbara Lee and I serve on appropriations, and we've already talked about we're going to have that through the next process for the period that would be covered by when he wants to do this parade. We're going to try to put an amendment forward to make sure that no monies can go towards this. So I completely agree with you. And just so you know, also, Bruce, the military folks, many of the military folks we've talked agree with you. It makes no sense to do this. This is all for Donald Trump's ego, so he can be more like his man crush, Vladimir Putin, or like the North Korean leader. And we don't need that in this country at all.
Melissa in Madison, Wisconsin, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan. We have 2 minutes to the end of the hour.
Hi, I just had a quick question. And hi, Mark, I'm your constituent.
Yep.
I was just wondering what you thought about raising the federal poverty level, because I know a lot of people's benefits are calculated by that, like whether or not they can afford insurance in this red state where they don't expand Medicaid.
Yes, I had a little bit of hard time hearing that. So could you just say the question again? I apologize.
Sorry, I was just wondering what you thought about raising the federal poverty guidelines.
Since so many things are calculated based on that.
So more people could qualify. Yeah, exactly. And I agree with you, because clearly with inflation and other things, we need to do that, just like why we're trying to index the minimum wage to inflation, so we don't have to constantly have a political battle to raise it. I think it's something that's a very rational agreement. And I might add, Elizabeth Warren just put out a new health care proposal idea that's intriguing, that's trying to tie into no more than 8.5% of someone's income would go to health insurance. Not it's related to your question, but I think it's related to that sort of thinking, so we can maybe look at different ways of making sure that people can get things like health insurance regardless of their economic status.
So, in other words, yes, we should raise the minimum.
I think that's something that and in general should be dealt with, especially given we have these different ways of doing consumer price index, and like for Social Security, for example, for seniors. Right. On gas doesn't make sense because they don't spend money on gas, but they pay more in medicine.
Change
a lot
the
of
indexes.
Things like that. Yeah, we should be making sure they keep up with where people's real costs are.
Yeah, Congressman, we're down to 4 seconds here, so I'll thank you so much for being with us today, and we'll keep an eye on this budget appropriation bill. Right, that's the big thing to look for.
Yep, in the next 48 hours for sure.
Yeah. Okay, Congressman Pocan, thanks so much for dropping by today.
Thank you.
It's always great having you with us. Congressman Mark Pocan, his website, pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at @RepMarkPocan, and he'll be back next week. It is coming up in the top of the hour. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242
or visit tomsbeets.com.
It's the Free Speech TV membership drive. Today is Wednesday, and we are about $24,000 behind in what we need to be raising to keep this network on the air, to keep the lights on, to keep the electrons flowing, to keep this show in your home. And so any amount of help right now is really appreciated and really does help. A lot of small contributions is basically how we make this thing happen. You know, thousands and thousands of people giving $10, $20, $30, $50, something like that, $100, $200. There's a few very large donors, but they're few and far between. We had one $5,000 donor on the first day of the campaign, and thank you very much to that donor. But you know, that's it so far. I mean, the vast majority. There have been a few $1,000 donors who want to come have lunch with Louise and me, and other than that, it is the small donors that make up this show, which is a good thing and a healthy thing. You know, it's like diversity in an ecosystem. You know, it's more broadly based, so it's more resilient. So please, if you're part of the 98% who have never donated to Free Speech TV, who have never joined Free Speech TV, who haven't become part of our family, take this opportunity to do so. This is a really pivotal time for progressive media. Conservative media has always had the backing of right-wing billionaires and big corporations, at least since the Powell memo in the early 70s. And increasingly, national public radio and public broadcasting systems are being taken over by right-wing billionaires who donate money to them, who dictate their programming content. David Koch, for example, killed a special about him that was supposed to be on PBS. And now you got right-wing think tanks that are constantly popping up on NPR all over the place, hyper-right politicians and whatnot. And there's no real balancing voices. How often do you hear Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren on NPR? Very rarely, if ever. So please call now, 877-378-8669, or Mark Pocan, for that matter. How often do you hear him on NPR? Please call, or anybody from the Congressional Progressive Caucus. They're just like, you know, not good for advertisers or something. Is that the deal? 877-378-8669. Please call now. With a $30 gift, you get your choice of one of 4 bumper stickers, the Free Speech TV bumper sticker, the This Is Not Normal bumper sticker, the Elect a Clown and Expect a Circus bumper sticker, and Thom Hartmann University. With a $60 gift, you get the lapel pin from the Human Rights Campaign, Love Conquers Hate. With a $72 gift, you get all 4 of those bumper stickers that I mentioned just a moment ago. With a $120 gift, you get an autographed copy of my book, Unequal Protection, plus an autographed photo of me, the picture that Louise took with her camera in Cuba, in front of a picture of Fidel Castro. With that's with a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt. You get Building a Just World on the front and Standing in Unity on the back. You get the Human Rights Campaign Love Conquers Hate lapel pin. You get an autographed copy of my book, Unequal Protection. This is my book about how the Supreme Court basically took away our rights and enthroned corporations as the legal rulers of America. And you get Bonnie Siegler's book, Signs of Resistance, A Visual History of Protest in the United States. That's with a $240 gift. With a $360 gift, you get the autographed Thom Hartmann photo in Cuba. You get the autographed book by me, Unequal Protection. You get the book When They Call You a Terrorist. This is the story of the lives of Black Lives Matter people by Patrice Kahn-Kollers. You get the book Signs of Resistance, A Visual History of Protest in America by Bonnie Siegler. You get a one-year subscription to our podcast, our audio podcast, which you can listen to anytime, anywhere, on pretty much any device. And we sell those over at thomhartmann.com. It's one of the ways we support the show. We are giving them away with a $360 gift to Free Speech TV. You get a year's podcasts. And you also get all four of the bumper stickers that we mentioned earlier. This Is Not Normal, Elect a Clown, Expect a Circus, the Free Speech TV one, and the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $480 gift, and just with a $480 gift, we've got a special treat. When Louise and I were in Cuba, we took a lot of video of just all kinds of cool stuff. This is all done by me with a little handheld camera that I picked up at the store just before we left. And it's not going to be available anywhere else. We're not going to put it on the air. It's not going to be for sale. It's the only way you can get this is with a $480 gift to Free Speech TV now. And 877-378-8669. In addition to that DVD, you will also get my book on equal protection, my book about the Supreme Court. You get the book When They Call You a Terrorist, Lives of Black Lives Matter by Patrice Kahn-Kollers. You get the book Signs of Resistance, A Visual History of Protest in America by Bonnie Siegler. And you get the gray Free Speech TV t-shirt. And with a $1,000 gift, if you call now, 877-378-8669, and make a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. You can drop by the studio here. We had a few people last Friday. It was just great. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you. Hartmann Program is brought to you in part
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Two data points to pull together before we begin our conversation with Julio Rivera. The first is Mark Condit, the terrorist down in Austin, Texas. He says, I enjoy cycling, tennis, reading, listening to music. I view myself as a conservative. And he wrote a great piece for when he was in school titled An Argument for the Death Penalty. And so he was a good conservative, a big fan of the death penalty, wants to do away with free abortions. Another one of the pieces he wrote, Why Gay Marriage Should Be Illegal. Another one, we should do away with the sex offender registry. Interesting stuff. But Donald Trump has come out and said that he wants to kill drug pushers. And so I raised this simple question of all the drugs that you can use, if you use the stimulants, including cocaine, they have therapeutic value. There's medical value. There's an actual reason to use many of those drugs. And typically when people are abusing them, they're trying to get toward that medical value. Alcohol has arguably a medical value. Caffeine has a medical value. But nicotine has none. There's no upside to nicotine. And when used as directed, cigarettes kill 500,000 Americans a year. So Julio Rivera, editorial director of Reactionary Times, columnist with Newsmax, right-wing news and politics. Revolutionarytimes.com is the website. Oh, yeah, it's Julio is the Twitter handle. Julio, welcome back. And why would you be in favor of the death penalty for somebody selling marijuana, but not in favor of the death penalty for somebody selling tobacco when nobody's ever died from marijuana, but 500,000 Americans every year die of tobacco?
Okay, you're misrepresenting. First of all, Donald Trump is not trying to execute drug pushers. What you're saying is a death penalty for the masterminds, the kingpins, like the Mexican drug lord types or people who are operating at that level in our country. He's not talking about, somebody selling nickel bags, Tom. He's talking about, people that are pushing kilos of, heroin into our country. And listen, I spoke, and this is a very serious thing, and I'm gonna bring up a story here. I had an opportunity to interview Eric Bolling. Eric Bowling, his son, unfortunately died when he took a Xanax pill that was laced with fentanyl. You know, these are the types of drugs that are killing people in our country. Just a small, tiny, microscopic amount of this Chinese fentanyl is all it takes to kill somebody. So if you have somebody who's pushing bricks of it, I'm talking about kilos, you know, in the tens, in the hundreds of kilos. One kilo itself, if you broke it up into the amount of, dosage that it would take to kill people, 1 kilo could probably kill about 15,000 people. 1 kilo of that type of deadly fentanyl. So, yes, if people are handling, large amounts of something so dangerous, yes, the death penalty does become an option for people like that. And I think Donald Trump is sending the correct message.
Right. So the fentanyl associated opiate overdoses account for what, around 15 to 30,000 deaths in the last year. We had 60,000 overdose deaths, and I think fentanyl was involved in about half of them.
Yes.
So, I get that, big quantities. And of course, I'm assuming you'd also want to go to China to find the labs that are making this stuff that are apparently approved by the Chinese government.
International effort would be important.
Right. And you'd want the death penalty for President Xi or something like that. But what about the tobacco? So are you arguing that the tobacco industry executives, the ones who made the conscious decision to lie to Americans for 50 years about how deadly and addictive nicotine is? It's 5 times more addictive than heroin. It's as deadly as fentanyl. If you put 1 drop of pure nicotine on your skin, you will die. We use it as a pesticide. In fact, the neonicotinoids, the weakened nicotine, seems to be what's killing the bees. So are you calling for the death penalty for the tobacco executives or just the CEOs or the stockholders?
Well, listen, Tom, tobacco's a different case altogether.
Tobacco is a drug, Julio.
It is. Of course, it's a drug as well. And it actually accounts for probably more deaths than, all the illegal drugs combined when you consider the massive
500,000 a year die from tobacco.
Conscious decision. I understand, but people make the conscious decision to go ahead and smoke, just like they make the conscious decision in a lot of cases to do drugs. But
we're not talking about users, though, Julio. We agree on that. We're talking about the big-time dealers. And the big-time dealers here are the tobacco industry executives, 7 of whom went to Congress, raised their right hand, and swore an oath on their children's graves, metaphorically, that tobacco was not addictive. These guys lied through their teeth. There was no penalty. They all went on to become multimillionaires and billionaires. Shouldn't they be put to death? They're killing Americans, Julio.
That's an interesting question.
They are killing Americans. They're killing more Americans than the Chinese fentanyl. They kill more Americans in 1 month than the Chinese fentanyl kills in an entire year. Should they be put to death?
I think the tobacco industry is horrible. Listen, I agree that it's terrible. And listen, I'm saying that to you as a 20-year smoker that's been trying desperately to quit smoking.
Oh, I know how hard it is. I quit. I smoked through my teenage years, and I quit when Louise got pregnant with our oldest child when I was 21, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done. And I have used and abused pretty much every drug out there, and I'll tell you, kicking nicotine was harder than anything else. It's just so death penalty for tobacco CEOs?
No, I mean that's a little ridiculous, Tom. I mean, we're talking
Why is it ridiculous?
There's violence and there's sudden death that's associated with a lot of these drugs. You get a bad batch of heroin, a bad batch of cocaine, a bad batch of fentanyl. There's people that die immediately. We've seen
if a 2-year-old eats a pack of cigarettes, they die.
What was that?
If a 2-year-old eats a pack of cigarettes, they die. Nicotine's poisonous.
Oh, if a 2-year-old eats, a Tide Pod, they probably die too. You want to go ahead and arrest people that
they die from a drug overdose.
Now?
They die from a drug overdose.
It doesn't matter.
It's a poisonous, addictive drug.
This is come on. You're kind of sensationalizing it.
No, my point is that if you're going to talk about killing,
Trump is saying. We need to send a message to major drug kingpins that if you're caught, if you're running a large operation, and you're putting drugs in all these major cities and all these people are dying, that the death penalty is on the table. That's the central theme of this conversation.
Well, one of the things that we know from, decades and decades of really good research is that the death penalty does not discourage people from committing murder. Now, because murder is typically an impulsive act, and when it's a planned act, people do not plan to get caught. But whether it would prevent people from selling drugs or not, I frankly don't know the answer. But we're talking about having the state, this big government that you're afraid of, the big government that runs the IRS and the post office, having that government that you so dislike decide which American citizens it is going to execute and which American citizens it is not going to execute. And apparently, if you are white and rich and run a tobacco company, the government's not going to execute you, even though you're killing at least 10 and maybe more times as many Americans every year as the poor Mexican or the teenager in California who's decided that, hey, I can put myself through college by selling a few pills on the side.
No, well, listen, pills, first of all, one pill can kill you, but the circumstances are different. Tobacco is not illegal in this country. In fact, the big government state, the big taxation state loves cigarettes because, the majority of the money that you spend when you buy a pack goes directly to the government.
So should we execute those?
Different set of circumstances.
Should we execute those lawmakers who keep working to keep tobacco legal? Mike Pence in 2000, his family's business was called Tobacco Road. It was a chain of 7-Eleven type stores that ultimately went bankrupt because they were apparently so poorly managed. But their principal product was selling tobacco. And in 2000, Mike Pence wrote a whole op-ed about how tobacco not addictive, not to worry, won't kill you. I mean, should we be having a conversation about the death penalty for politicians who support the tobacco industry?
Are you calling for the execution of our vice president?
No, I'm not. I'm asking if there should be a conversation about the death penalty for people who promote and sell tobacco.
Well, as long as it's not illegal, no. That's the difference part of it. But
so shouldn't we then Julio? Why don't we do what Portugal did and legalize all drugs? They actually dropped the addiction rate, they dropped their HIV rate, they dropped their Hep C rate when they simply decriminalized all drugs. Said if you want to use drugs, we'll have a safe space for you to do it.
That sounds like a libertarian argument, a little too libertarian for me. I mean, I think there are certain things that have to be off of the table. You can't allow for, especially in this climate where we've had the pharmaceutical industry working in concert with physicians to get people hooked on a lot of this stuff.
So you want the death penalty for the pharmaceutical executives?
You just want to see people die.
They're selling a hell of a lot more drugs than the kids are.
Well, they are. That is a fair point, Tom.
Okay.
It definitely is.
Julio, always interesting talking with you. Thank you for dropping by today. Julio Rivera.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Yep, my pleasure. ReactionaryTimes.com. Oh, yeah, it's Julio is the Twitter handle. We'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with more of the news of the day, and boy, is there a pile of it, and your calls right after this. And welcome back. Let's see here. Wow, a lot of calls on drugs. That's great. Morris in Long Beach, California. Hey, Morris, thanks for listening to KPFK. What's on your mind today?
Well, I love you, first of all, Professor. Earlier on, when you were reading in the first hour, I could have swore you were reading from Manfred Max Neef's Barefoot Economics.
No.
Of course it wasn't, but I know. But I said, is that what he's reading from? And also, a good friend of ours, Russell, they called in from Chicago. Russell, go online and look up Mr. Lee Atwater, Russell. Just listen to his audio.
Oh, yeah.
And then go read a book called Democracy in Chains by Nancy McLean, page 220 and page 221, and then you'll have all your answers to your questions. But this is why I called you, Professor. Nancy Pelosi, she's got some competition. There's a candidate running in her district. His name is Buttar. I just found out it's spelled
Is it Shahid?
B-U. That's it.
Yeah, Shahid used to be a regular guest on my program on RT.
Well, that's why he's going to get arrested. But anyway, this guy is Tea Party, but on the left side, and I'm only saying that because of his convictions. You've got to listen to this young man's language and his messaging. And another thing I liked about him, he said the Democratic Party's playbook is to say to everybody, we are not Trump. But he's not following that narrative. He's saying that the pillars are that people like Nancy Pelosi, Tom Perez, they are the corporate pillars of the establishment. This man spoke about surveillance. He spoke about the war on drugs. He spoke about the prison industrial complex. He even spoke about slavery. He spoke about the military budget. He even spoke about fighting these libertarian fantasies. This guy is a candidate. He may not be in your district, but this is the spirit of the kind of candidates that we need in the Democratic Party. And, folks, I'm not really jumping up and down about the Democratic Party, but you got to vote for those guys with a big D in front of them, because you can move them guys. If they got an R in front of them, they're not going to move on nothing.
Well, and the reality is, Morris, if Shahed is actually enrolled in the primary in California against Pelosi, he's certainly not going to win. I mean, you know, she's very popular in her district there in San Francisco, but that means that the Democratic Party is embracing people who have those perspectives, and that's a good thing. I mean, that's moving in the right direction. And Shahed he's one of the smartest men I know. He's one of the smartest people I know. He's a very, very smart guy, and
You're catching my drift.
Very, very well informed, and he would make a hell of a legislator. And you know, typically when he was on our program, we talked about Muslim issues and you know, the surveillance state and stuff like that. But he's very knowledgeable on a whole variety of things. Plus, he's got a whole second life as a musician or a rapper. Yeah, I mean, he's really a well-rounded guy. Shahed was always one of my favorite people. So I can't endorse him against Nancy Pelosi. I think Nancy Pelosi does a great job, frankly, but and the fact that she's such a lightning rod should inspire us all rather than cause us to run away from her, like Connor Lamb did. But boy, I hope Shahed moves. I hope he continues with his electoral stuff.
I would suggest this: if I were Nancy Pelosi, I'm not kidding you, Professor, I wouldn't debate this guy one-on-one. You know, you just got through with a knucklehead, and you always pick well, I shouldn't say it. I apologize. But anyway, I would not, if I were Nancy Pelosi, and I'm serious, I would not debate this guy. It's like a boxer, you're the heavyweight champion, and you know a contender's real good, and you'll take it from you. You don't want to box him. That used to take place 20 years ago. But it would be dangerous for her to debate this guy because of the narrative that he would introduce.
Oh yeah, he's like Muhammad Ali. I mean, you know, he can fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee. I mean,
no, Professor.
Yeah, that's Shahed. Morris, thanks for the call. Thanks for the heads up too. I'll have to drop him a note and say, you know, good luck. Morris, thanks a lot. Great to hear from you. We'll be right back. It's 21 minutes past the hour.
I think that putting a wife to work is...
Welcome back. Boy, a lot in the news. I'm going to get to your calls in just a minute. A lot of people wanted to talk about drugs and whatnot, but just there is some really hot news happening and needs to be covered. Mark Anthony Condit is the apparent terrorist. They're not calling him a terrorist because he's a white guy, but anybody who sends bombs to people, particularly to black people, who's a white guy, which is what he was doing, is a terrorist. And Charlotte Clymer posts just some really brilliant stuff. Charlotte posts, Mark Anthony Condit was a white male terrorist, this is on Twitter, and a likely white supremacist. He perpetrated terrorist attacks against a community resulting in death and destruction. This is not quiet, reserved, a nice boy, or whatever the hell else whitewashing nonsense. I grew up in the same area as Mark Condit. I was raised in poverty in an abusive household. I did not become a terrorist who takes a significant interest in white supremacy. Go to hell with this nice boy BS narrative. Nice boys don't ship bombs. And then she shows a picture of Draylen Mason at his cello, a young African-American. This is Draylen Mason. He was 17 years old. He was a talented cellist on track for the University of Texas when he was killed by a package from Mark Anthony Condit. This was a nice kid. Ask yourself why you haven't heard about him over the past week. And Condit, big supporter of the death penalty, calls himself a conservative. When are we going to start calling these people terrorists? I mean, it's Stockholm University, Christian Christensen. He says, U.S. media and politicians have been very, very quick to apply the terrorism label when suspects are not white because such an application carries no social or professional blowback when they're wrong. Brilliant. And now that the suspect has been identified as a white male, commentators predict that lawmakers, the major media, and law enforcement will likely follow the White House line that he's not a terrorist. All right, can you imagine if he had been Muslim or if he had been black? Amazing. It's just amazing. He's 23 years old. He's from Pflugerville, Texas. 5 bombs, killed 2 people, injured 4 others. Meanwhile, when Cambridge Analytica was coming up with memes for the Trump campaign, Donald Trump, has publicly said he was advised to use the phrases drain the swamp and build the wall, and he both thought that they were dumb. Unsophisticated, dumb, simplistic. But when he tried them, the crowds went nuts. And so he kept trying them over and over and building them over and over, and that became his signature. These came out of Cambridge Analytica. As Melissa B. posts over Democratic Underground, they literally tested Nazism in their focus groups and decided it was a winning message. The article is in the Washington Post. Bannon oversaw Cambridge Analytica's collection of Facebook data, according to a former employee, by Craig Timberg, Carla Adam, and Michael Kranish. Bannon received more than $125,000 in consulting fees from Cambridge Analytica and owned membership units in the company worth between $1 and $5 million. Wiley said that both Bannon and Rebecca Mercer, whose father Robert Mercer financed the company, participated in conference calls in 2014 in which plans to collect Facebook data were discussed. In focus groups arranged to test messages for the 2014 midterms. Keep in mind, this is before Trump came along. These voters responded to calls for, quote, building a new wall to block the entry of illegal immigrants, end quote, to reforms intended to, quote, drain the swamp, end quote, of Washington's entrenched political community, and to thinly veiled forms of racism toward African Americans called, quote, race realism. And finally, they tested Russian President Vladimir Putin. This was interesting. He says the only foreign thing we tested was Putin. It turns out there's a lot of Americans who really like this idea of a really strong authoritarian leader, and people were quite defensive in focus groups of Putin's invasion of Crimea. That's interesting. I think it's probably more complex than that, but in any case, the drain the swamp, build the wall, and race realism. These essentially Nazi memes were what Cambridge Analytica was testing and that the Trump campaign ran with. Now, juxtapose that with this news out of Illinois. Arthur Jones is the former head of the American Nazi Party. He still calls himself a Nazi. He's quite proud of his Nazism. He just won the Republican nomination for Congress in Illinois' 3rd Congressional District. A real Nazi. Tell me the Democrat or the Republican Party does not have a Nazi problem. Meanwhile, Cambridge Analytica has links to Eric Prince, the founder of Blackwater. Alexander Nix and Eric Prince on Emmer Data, another company that is apparently picking it up from Cambridge Analytica.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's amazing. It's like, the swamp. When we come back, I'm going to tell you how to get apps out of your Facebook stuff, and we'll pick up your phone calls.
It's the Free Speech TV membership drive. Today is Wednesday, and we are about $24,000 behind in what we need to be raising to keep this network on the air, to keep the lights on, to keep the electrons flowing, to keep this show in your home. And so any amount of help right now is really appreciated and really does help. A lot of small contributions is basically how we make this thing happen. You know, thousands and thousands of people giving $10, $20, $30, $50, something like that, $100, $200. There's a few very large donors, but they're few and far between. We had one $5,000 donor on the first day of the campaign, and thank you very much to that donor. But you know, that's it so far. I mean, the vast majority, there have been a few $1,000 donors who want to come have lunch with Louise and me, and other than that, it is the small donors that make up this show, which is a good thing and a healthy thing. You know, it's like diversity in an ecosystem. You know, it's more broadly based, so it's more resilient. So please, if you're part of the 98% who have never donated to Free Speech TV, who have never joined Free Speech TV, who haven't become part of our family, take this opportunity to do so. This is a really pivotal time for progressive media. Conservative media has always had the backing of right-wing billionaires and big corporations, at least since the Powell memo in the early 70s. And increasingly, national public radio and public broadcasting systems are being taken over by right-wing billionaires who donate money to them, who dictate their programming content. David Koch, for example, killed a special about him that was supposed to be on PBS. And now you got right-wing think tanks that are constantly popping up on NPR all over the place, hyper-right politicians and whatnot. And there's no real balancing voices. How often do you hear Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren on NPR? Very rarely, if ever. So please call now, 877-378-8669, or Mark Pocan, for that matter. How often do you hear him on NPR? Please call, or anybody from the Congressional Progressive Caucus. They're just like, you know, not good for advertisers or something. Is that the deal? 877-378-8669. Please call now. With a $30 gift, you get your choice of one of 4 bumper stickers, the Free Speech TV bumper sticker, the This Is Not Normal bumper sticker, the Elect a Clown and Expect a Circus bumper sticker, and Thom Hartmann University. With a $60 gift, you get the lapel pin from the Human Rights Campaign, Love Conquers Hate. With a $72 gift, you get all 4 of those bumper stickers that I mentioned just a moment ago. With a $120 gift, you get an autographed copy of my book, Unequal Protection, plus an autographed photo of me, the picture that Louise took with her camera in Cuba, in front of a picture of Fidel Castro. With that's with a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt. You get Building a Just World on the front and Standing in Unity on the back. You get the Human Rights Campaign Love Conquers Hate lapel pin. You get an autographed copy of my book, Unequal Protection. This is my book about how the Supreme Court basically took away our rights and enthroned corporations as the legal rulers of America. And you get Bonnie Siegler's book, Signs of Resistance, A Visual History of Protest in the United States. That's with a $240 gift. With a $360 gift, you get the autographed Thom Hartmann photo in Cuba. You get the autographed book by me, Unequal Protection. You get the book, When They Call You a Terrorist. This is the story of the lives of Black Lives Matter people by Patrice Kahn-Kollers. You get the book, Signs of Resistance, A Visual History of Protest in America by Bonnie Siegler. You get a 1-year subscription to our podcast, our audio podcast, which you can listen to anytime, anywhere, on pretty much any device. We sell those over at thomhartmann.com. It's one of the ways we support the show. We are giving them away with a $360 gift to Free Speech TV. Get a year's podcasts. And you also get all 4 of the bumper stickers that we mentioned earlier. This Is Not Normal, Elect a Clown, Expect a Circus, the Free Speech TV one, and the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $480 gift, and just with a $480 gift, we've got a special treat. When Louise and I were in Cuba, we took a lot of video of just all kinds of cool stuff. This is all done by me with a little handheld camera that I picked up at the store just before we left. And it's not going to be available anywhere else. We're not going to put it on the air. It's not going to be for sale. It's the only way you can get this is with a $480 gift to Free Speech TV now, and 877-378-8669. In addition to that DVD, you will also get my book on equal protection, my book about the Supreme Court. You get the book When They Call You a Terrorist, Lives of Black Lives Matter by Patrice Kahn-Kullers. You get the book Signs of Resistance, a visual history of protest in America by Bonnie Siegler. And you get the gray Free Speech TV t-shirt. And with a $1,000 gift, if you call now, 877-378-8669, and make a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. You can drop by the studio here. We had a few people last Friday. It was just great. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Back, it's time for Geeky Science. Yes, there's our Geeky Science music. A vegetable compound could have a key role in beating Alzheimer's disease, he says as he sips on his Super Beets. Oh, that's good stuff. A compound in beets that gives the vegetable its distinctive red color this is from Science Daily, could eventually slow the accumulation of misfolded proteins in the brain. This was at the American Chemical Society's 255th national meeting. Boy, they've been around for a while, longer than the country. Our data, this is one of the researchers, our data suggests that betanin, a compound in beet extract, this is the stuff that makes everything so bright red from beets, right? Betanin, a compound in beet extract, shows some promise as an inhibitor of certain chemical reactions in the brain that are involved in the progression of Alzheimer's disease. Much of this damage occurs when beta amyloid attaches itself to metals such as iron or copper. And by the way, some people take iron supplements, and most of our water goes through copper pipes, so we get a lot of these metals in our food. These metals can cause beta amyloid peptides to misfold and bind together in clumps that promote inflammation and oxidation, a process similar to rusting in nearby neurons, eventually killing them. Previous research conducted by other scientists suggests that beetroot juice can improve oxygen flow to the aging brain and possibly improve cognitive performance. Well, that, the whole oxygen flow thing, that's why there are all these beet supplements out there that are being sold. But now they're taking this a step further. This is the scientists, not the companies. Betanin, a beet compound used in commercial dyes that readily binds to these metals, can block the effects of copper on beta amyloid and in turn prevent the misfolding of these peptides and thus the oxidation of neurons. So our geeky science. Here's a second little semi-science thing. Everybody wants to know what to do about Facebook. If you open your Facebook app or go to your Facebook page on your computer and choose settings, in the settings you will find something that's labeled apps, APPS. Now, if you click on that, you will see all the applications that are able to suck all your Facebook data out the same way Cambridge Analytica did, or in similar fashion. Now, how do those apps get in there? I looked on my phone, on my Facebook just a little bit ago, and I didn't have a single app attached to Facebook. Why is that? Well, because every time I go to a site and it says sign in with Facebook, I always choose sign in with email instead. I have never in my life signed into anything with Facebook. And the reason why is because if you sign in using Facebook, it connects Facebook to that site and to that app, and now whoever owns that site or that app is inside your Facebook. You'll see it on your program, and they're sucking down all this data. Or at least that's my understanding of it. Now, if I'm wrong on any of this, please call and correct me, but I think I've got this figured out. Duran in Minneapolis. Hey, Duran, what's on your mind today?
Hey, I want to give a call about this war on drugs and giving the death penalty. It's pretty ironic. Let me just say this. I'm a young black male. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. I moved to Minneapolis, and on 10 different occasions, I fit the description. I'm college educated. I was football, a scholar athlete, never been in trouble, never been to jail. But I fit the description over 10 times. Maybe 5 of those 10 times I've had guns pointed at my head by the police. And simultaneously, my aunt died from being overprescribed opiates. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of individuals who are going to be in trouble and who the hammer is going to come down on are people of color.
Yep.
And that's number one there. And also, you had a point earlier in the show talking about, how can we be free with, predatory lending. I purchased my first home a couple of years ago. I went through Wells Fargo. They asked me the most horrendous questions. Do you have a gym membership? How much is that? Are you buying lunch every week? How much are you spending on that? And they only approved me for less than $100,000. And I want to say I've made over $85,000 for the last consecutive 7 years of my life.
Wow.
Okay. So when I switched from Wells Fargo, I went to M&T Bank, applied for a mortgage, and when they sent over the loan documents, they had me listed as white on the documents. I didn't change that at all, right? So I just want to see how this is going to play out. I got approved for over $125,000 more, $225,000, $125,000 more than what
Just by
Wells Fargo
changing your race on the form?
Just by changing my race on the form, which
Incredible.
is crazy, right?
Yeah.
And also,
That's worse than
we're
crazy.
going to talk about this terrorist guy in Texas. White America has always kind of glorified, how they even kill each other. Look at the cowboy culture, right?
Yep.
That's an awesome culture. Walk in a place, kill everybody, right?
Yep.
That's great. Even look at these old gangsters, right? You can go tour the old jail facility of some of these old gangsters that were actively killing police, FBI, everybody, right?
Yeah,
But
there's
it's not
shrines
right. It
to
doesn't
John
work.
Dillinger. Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't work like that on the other hand. Now the weed is legal. Now that weed is legal in certain places of the United States, they're still not letting African-American men out of jail who was initially selling marijuana, right? So there's something really weird, and I feel like the White House is being naive towards certain principles of judgment.
They're
in
not
which they
being
should
naive,
not be.
Duran. They are openly, nakedly racist.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know
Well,
any other way to say it. There have been so many dog whistles coming out of this administration. I mean, going all the way back to when Trump made his first announcement and started out by talking about Mexicans as rapists. It's we need to reinvent that. The Republican Party are sending they're not sending their best. They're sending us rapists. But that said, this is, I think, increasingly no longer a mystery for white Americans, particularly those white Americans who have very little contact with people of color. Even those folks are no longer able to live in that nice little white bubble any longer. It's the shootings of unarmed black men that was all over the news for a year or two.
Yeah, and it's funny that you just brought that up. There's a gentleman in Northern California, African-American male, 23 years old, shot and killed in his own backyard. Somebody called in and said they seen a guy breaking into a vehicle and using like a crowbar tool to break the window. This guy is in his backyard hanging out with his family on his cell phone, right? Helicopter flies overhead, and they see a guy in the backyard with something in his hand, and they reported that to their ground police troops. They showed up to the backyard through the alley, and they shot and killed this young man. And it wasn't even who they want, and he wasn't even the criminal.
Good God.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I don't understand how these guys can show up, mow down, hundreds of people at schools, show up to movie theater, mow down everybody with these guns, and they can be taken alive. And you probably even get a burger from Burger King on your way to jail, right?
Yeah.
You have these unarmed black guys who the police are just so frightened of. I just don't understand it, and it really gets my blood flowing because, how's Dylan Roof alive? How is the guy who just shot up Florida alive? How is this bomb guy even being taken alive? And you got a brother in his backyard of his own home using a cell phone. They show up and blow his head off.
Yeah.
It's crazy, Tom. It's crazy.
It is, Duran. It is, Duran, and it's why white people need to be having these conversations about what white privilege is and how our country came to be so racist and all of the original sins that are associated with our country. The genocide of Native Americans was racially based. The genocide of African Americans, racially based. The enslavement, obviously, of African Americans, racially based. Jim Crow laws to this day. And now Donald Trump with his whole, let's trash Mexicans and immigrants, and even a second-generation judge from Indiana or Ohio who happens to have the last name of Curiel, a Hispanic-sounding name. Let's trash him because of his ancestry. It's not his ancestry that Donald Trump was trashing. It's the amount of melanin in his skin, and which has nothing to do with any damn thing except your ability to synthesize vitamin D. That's it.
Absolutely. And you know what's funny, Tom? So I told you I purchased my house, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, when a house is for sale, there's a for sale sign in the front yard, right?
Yeah.
I bought the house. A week later, my neighbor comes over and says, "Hey, so are you the new renter?"
Oh, interesting.
Obviously, 62-year-old, 75-year-old white guy. I mean, come
Yeah,
on.
so he's looking at you as a black guy and thinking, oh, he couldn't afford to buy this. He must be renting.
Yeah.
Well, it could be. It could be, Duran. I mean, don't always judge everybody. It may be that house had a series of renters in it too, but
Well, it's been vacant for 3 years before I purchased it.
Okay. Then you're not the new renter. I get it.
No.
Yeah.
Well, all right, Tom.
Duran, thanks for sharing your experience with us. You've fit the profile 10 times in your life. I have been stopped by the police numerous times in my life. I've never fit the profile. It's always just, in fact, usually they let me off of this, even on a speeding ticket. Oh yeah, no problem. Just don't do it again.
Yeah, I've never been off any kind of ticket. I've been pulled over to ask, do I know where I'm going? Because I look lost.
No, I am so conscious of the benefit of the white privilege that I inherited from my parents. That or that member of the Lucky Sperm Club, whatever you want to call it. We've got to figure out a way to language this, but this is a real and serious and insanely destructive issue. The human potential that is being destroyed in the United States, that is being lost as a result of racism, the structural racism in our society, the economic the economics of racism, the violence associated with racism, particularly when it comes to policing. These are things that white people for years and years have always, kind of sat back and said, it's between the black people in the ghetto and the cops, right? And it's not. This is, and even if it was, it would be wrong. But this is damaging the fabric of our country.
Oh, absolutely. And just like you said, if you even take a look at Freddie Gray out there in Baltimore, right?
Yep.
A lot of people had fingers to point at Freddie Gray. What was he doing? He had to be doing something. Why did he run? And, when black folks say, hey, I literally was doing nothing, it's okay to believe us, because when you take a look at what's happening in Baltimore now with the police department and all the corruption that's starting to surface, now they're kind of sweeping that whole story under the rug.
Yep.
You get what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So it's just something tough to deal with, and hopefully we don't have to live with it any much longer, but I don't think that's a fact.
Well, let's hope so, Duran, and let's all keep working for racial justice as well as every other form of justice. Thank you for the call.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We'll be back in 4 minutes with Bob Ney with Talk Media News. Check it out. Stick around. And welcome back. Tom in Big Timber, Montana, watching Free Speech TV. Hey, Tom, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
I hear you fine. What's up, Tom?
Okay, this is, I'm a 73-year-old FDR progressive, and I have a basic question. I've always wanted to understand that no one, except on the Thom Hartmann Progressive, Democracy Now! Side, ever posed. And that is this. I'll try to make this as quick as I can. The right wing in America, which has pulled all of us into what I would call total insanity, and continues to, has two major components: fundamentalist Christians and libertarians. And
I'd add a third one, and that would be white racists. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not saying that those are the only but those are two very powerful forces.
Yes.
Now, very quickly, fundamentalist Christians, and I am not one, although my grandfather was a minister in the Church of the Nazarene, somewhat right-wing fundamentalist, but we have rejected that. And they always talk about the sinfulness of man. Of course, they never talk about the sinfulness of, it's always an exclusive man, but we know that they mean everyone. But at the same time, that's only, and even in moderate Christian churches and other Jewish and Islamic, they're always talking about the sinfulness of humans, of sinfulness of man. That's just not debatable. I mean, go to any you have to, you ask for your sins and redemption.
Yeah. Tom, where are you going with this?
Okay, so the next thing is the libertarians. They talk about how there should be no regulations, no taxes, except maybe police and army. Okay, and then they throw in the thing about drugs. Okay, so how does Homo sapiens be born in sin and Homo economicus be sinless? In other words, you can't tell people in their economic decisions what to do, like regulations and taxes. Right. Those are completely antithetical.
Well, they are, and we should be pitting the evangelicals against the libertarians. There's another thing to add to this, Tom, which I think is really interesting, is the idea of why is it that conservatives who tend to be in with the evangelicals in believing in original sin, in believing that humans are born defective, why is it that conservatives tend to blame the individual when mass shooting happens, whereas liberals tend to blame the weapon rather than the individual? And I think the reason why is because conservatives believe that people are born evil and we have to constantly fight that evil nature. And when we fail to fight that evil nature, that's on us. That's our failing. Whereas liberals, and therefore, blame the individual. Whereas liberals would say, no, people are born good, and the whole job and work of society is to bring out that goodness. And sometimes you have variables introduced into society and culture which conflict with that goodness. For example, easy availability of assault weapons, and that causes people to behave badly. And so if you don't have the assault weapons, you're not going to have the mass shootings. So I think that this issue of what is sin and what isn't and what is the true nature of man is really the core issue in all of our political debates. It's the main schism between left and right, is the essential nature of man, of man and women, humans, good or not? Talk Media News and find out what's going on in the world today. This report brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com and Ellen Ratner's new book, Loving What You Do. On the line with us with Talk Media News, the author of Sideswiped, Bob Ney. Congressman, welcome back.
Thank you, Tom. How are you?
I am great, but I'll get better. I hope that's true of you. And are you in D.C.? Is the snow getting you?
Well, I am in the Ohio Valley, and as a result, I don't have Skype today, but I'm in the Ohio Valley.
Great. Okay, so what's going on in the world today?
Well, we can talk about the United States, but we can do it in sort of a roundabout international way. Yeah. As we know, His Royal Majesty, who is still Crown Prince but is actually the acting king, has visited, as I'm sure he privately calls, his Western Kingdom, meaning the United States.
Right.
And of course,
his Western Palace.
Yes, excuse my sarcasm, but I can't help it on this one.
Yeah.
And when Donald Trump, I have friends. I used to work in a company, as you know, in Saudi Arabia in Jeddah, and so I'm very familiar with the kingdom. And I have friends over there, and they told me when Trump visited, they had televisions set every so many feet as the car went down, the highway in Riyadh. I mean, they actually had his picture, welcoming with thousands of televisions. So they knew how to ego boost. and now the Crown Prince is over here, and Donald Trump is looking for several things. The one I found the most almost laughable, Tom, is the fact that in these conversations, President Trump is wanting Aramco oil to go on the New York Stock Exchange, thus boosting the exchange. Now, Aramco is the Arab American Oil Company, as it's called, is very, very against that, and there's a good reason, by the way.
Disclosure?
Well, I'm sorry, what's that?
Disclosure?
You got it. Everybody else thinks it's because, the oil and the prices. No, it's disclosure. Securities Exchange Commission and the things that the Saudis do in the corporate world, in order to run business, and if they're under the eyes of the SEC, it would be a complete nightmare for them. So, but they've been taunting, Trump with that. They're also talking about nuclear exposure in the sense that, in one hand, they want to do everything under the sun to stop the Iran deal, which is what the Crown Prince, who's really the functioning king, is over here trying to do, to stop the deal that President Obama did with Iran. And you can bet that Trump will come out, after this, swinging on that deal. And one of the reasons they are doing it, too, is once they do stop the deal, and if Iran is not monitored and begins any form of, nuclear ambition or is accused of it because they're not monitored, guess who wants a nuclear weapon? The Saudis.
Of course.
So by undoing the deal, it leads their path to be able to ask for the beginning of a nuclear weapon. And that means hundreds of billions of dollars of contracts, which is what the White House is going to look for.
Wow.
So, everybody thinks, this is the Crown Prince. He's changed things. He's also wanting to be exempt from the lawsuits that could occur because of the 19 Saudis on the airplanes when they flew into the towers and into the Pentagon and Pennsylvania, and they want immune from that, Tom. They, as we know, had activity when it came to funding Wahhabism and the Madrasa radical schools, but they want exempted from it. So there's a whole laundry list that he's got, and he's going to stay about 2 weeks in the United States to have this big promo tour. But he will get a lot of sympathy out of Trump because I've saved the best for last. We know the business relationship and the fact that Kushner, the son-in-law, has business relationships in Saudi Arabia.
Really?
That might be exposed because, after all, Trump's private conversation with Putin was exposed by the inner circle.
Yeah, remarkable. I think that Kushner, the apparent corruption of the Kushner family is, you look at what they did with the, lying to New York City and New York State about rent-controlled housing so that they could, jack up the price of their buildings and sell them off. It's pretty mind-boggling. His dad went to prison for this kind of stuff, but anyway, back to you.
Yes, and also he had a bailout, as we know, and in fact, the one member of the royal family that bailed him out was actually later on imprisoned in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel.
Oh, really? Kushner was bailed out by a Saudi?
Oh, yes.
Daddy Kushner?
They had a deal. They had a deal where he was, the man that was offering the bailout, and his name escapes me right now. I'll send you the information on it, though. But there was a man, and I wish I could remember his name, that was going to do it was a multi-million-dollar bailout, and it got to be high profile, and so as a result, there was a lot of problem in publicity in the kingdom.
So they backed away.
Yeah, he had backed away, but he was seeking, and it was a bailout for $1 billion. I think it was $1 billion. And
okay.
And again, I'll send the man's name to you.
Yeah, we have a half a minute left, Bob. What else is going on?
Yes, the Putin deal. The president is furious that internally somehow everything leaked out, including the cue cards that he had that says "Do not congratulate him," and do bring up the fact of the killing in England.
Right, and neither of which he did. Or he did congratulate him, and he didn't bring up the killing in England. It seems to me that there can't be more than 5, 6, 7 people who even knew about this or who were involved in this.
Oh, that's right.
And these are high-level people with insanely tight security clearances, and for them to be leaking stuff to the press means that they are either scared to death or furious, or both.
Exactly.
And that should make us all very, very worried, in my opinion. Bob Ney with Talk Media News, the author of Sideswiped. Bob, thanks for dropping by today. Great talking with you. We'll be back. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242
or visit tomsbeets.com.
It's the Free Speech TV membership drive. Today is Wednesday, and we are about $24,000 behind in what we need to be raising to keep this network on the air, to keep the lights on, to keep the electrons flowing, to keep this show in your home. And so any amount of help right now is really appreciated and really does help. A lot of small contributions is basically how we make this thing happen. Thousands and thousands of people giving $10, $20, $30, $50, something like that, $100, $200. There's a few very large donors, but they're few and far between. We had one $5,000 donor on the first day of the campaign, and thank you very much to that donor. But that's it so far. I mean, the vast majority. There have been a few $1,000 donors who want to come have lunch with Louise and me, and other than that, it is the small donors that make up this show, which is a good thing, and a healthy thing. It's like diversity in an ecosystem. It's more broadly based, so it's more resilient. So please, if you're part of the 98% who have never donated to Free Speech TV, who have never joined Free Speech TV, who haven't become part of our family, take this opportunity to do so. This is a really pivotal time for progressive media. Conservative media has always had the backing of right-wing billionaires and big corporations, at least since the Powell memo in the early 70s. And increasingly, national public radio and public broadcasting systems are being taken over by right-wing billionaires who donate money to them, who dictate their programming content. David Koch, for example, killed a special about him that was supposed to be on PBS. And now you got right-wing think tanks that are constantly popping up on NPR all over the place, hyper-right politicians and whatnot. And there's no real balancing voices. How often do you hear Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren on NPR? Very rarely, if ever. So please call now, 877-378-8669, or Mark Pocan, for that matter. How often do you hear him on NPR? Please call, or anybody from the Congressional Progressive Caucus. They're just like, not good for advertisers or something. Is that the deal? 877-378-8669. Please call now. With a $30 gift, you get your choice of one of 4 bumper stickers, the Free Speech TV bumper sticker, the This Is Not Normal bumper sticker, the Elect a Clown and Expect a Circus bumper sticker, and Thom Hartmann University. With a $60 gift, you get the lapel pin from the Human Rights Campaign, Love Conquers Hate. With a $72 gift, you get all 4 of those bumper stickers that I mentioned just a moment ago. With a $120 gift, you get an autographed copy of my book, Unequal Protection, plus an autographed photo of me, the picture that Louise took with her camera in Cuba, in front of a picture of Fidel Castro. With a, that's with a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt. You get Building a Just World on the front and Standing in Unity on the back. You get the Human Rights Campaign Love Conquers Hate lapel pin. You get an autographed copy of my book, Unequal Protection. This is my book about how the Supreme Court basically took away our rights and enthroned corporations as the legal rulers of America. And you get Bonnie Siegler's book, Signs of Resistance, A Visual History of Protest in the United States. That's with a $240 gift. With a $360 gift, you get the autographed Thom Hartmann photo in Cuba. You get the autographed book by me, Unequal Protection. You get the book, When They Call You a Terrorist. This is the story of the lives of Black Lives Matter people by Patrice Kahn-Kollers. You get the book Signs of Resistance, A Visual History of Protest in America by Bonnie Siegler. You get a 1-year subscription to our podcast, our audio podcast, which you can listen to anytime, anywhere, on pretty much any device. And we sell those over at thomhartmann.com. It's one of the ways we support the show. We are giving them away with a $360 gift to Free Speech TV. You get a year's podcasts. And you also get all 4 of the bumper stickers that we mentioned earlier. This Is Not Normal, Elect a Clown, Expect a Circus, the Free Speech TV one, and the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $480 gift, and just with a $480 gift, we've got a special treat. When Louise and I were in Cuba, we took a lot of video of just all kinds of cool stuff. This is all done by me with a little handheld camera that I picked up at the store just before we left. And it's not going to be available anywhere else. We're not going to put it on the air. It's not going to be for sale. It's the only way you can get this is with a $480 gift to Free Speech TV now, and 877-378-8669. In addition to that DVD, you will also get my book Unequal Protection, my book about the Supreme Court. You get the book When They Call You a Terrorist, Lives of Black Lives Matter by Patrice Kahn-Kollers. You get the book Signs of Resistance, A Visual History of Protest in America by Bonnie Siegler. And you get the gray Free Speech TV t-shirt. And with a $1,000 gift, if you call now, 877-378-8669, and make a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. You can drop by the studio here. We had a few people last Friday, which is great. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. On the line with us is Evan Greer. Evan is the campaign director at Fight for the Future. Fightforthefuture.org is the website. Internationally touring musician and speaker. She writes regularly for The Guardian, Time, and Newsweek. Evan's Twitter handle is Evan, EVAN_Greer, GREER. And Evan, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me back on, Tom.
Thanks for joining us. The Cloud Act. First of all, this whole idea of a cloud, it's like, you know, if Microsoft or Apple were to come to the average person and say, hey, why don't you take all your private information, all your backups, all your emails, all your pictures, all your correspondence, all your porn, whatever you've got, and just put it on our servers where we can go through it and we can look at it to our heart's content and we can figure out who you are and we can sell some of that information to people who might want to market things to you. People would go, oh my God, you can't do that. So instead of saying putting it on our servers, they're saying put it in the cloud. And everybody happily puts it in the cloud. Somehow the cloud is this magical thing. And now Congress is getting into the act with the Cloud Act. First of all, what do you think about my metaphor? And secondly, what the heck is the Cloud Act?
Sure. Well, it has been said that the cloud, it just means other people's computers. But getting into this act, it actually doesn't have a lot to do with that specific technology. What this bill is about is allowing police, law enforcement in the U.S. and in other countries to have more direct and easier access to the massive amount of extremely sensitive personal information that large tech companies in the U.S. like Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and others hold. Now, what's particularly interesting about this is, again, that this isn't just a U.S. surveillance bill. This would empower the U.S. Attorney General, so at the current moment, Jeff Sessions, to engage in partnerships with other countries and essentially give those countries free rein to conduct surveillance of data held by U.S. tech companies and of U.S. citizens. And, for myself, I'm someone that cares about privacy for people everywhere, not just in the U.S. But this would really provide an end run around the Fourth Amendment and endanger activists, journalists, human rights workers in the U.S. and in other countries around the world by giving countries that have bad human rights track records, bad privacy policies and practices, more access to information that can be used to build profiles on people, to target people for law enforcement action, arrest, or violence. So this is really a fundamental issue that affects not just our privacy, but all of our safety and security as well.
So where did this come from? Who's promoting this and why?
So this is a bill that's being pushed for actually by many of those large tech companies like Microsoft, Facebook, and Google, basically because it makes their lives easier. Right now, they have to deal with laws in the U.S. and in other countries that they operate in. If the cops in London want to get some information that's being held by Microsoft on a server in the U.S., there's a bunch of hoops that those cops have to jump through. There's a bunch of hoops that Microsoft has to jump through. And it basically makes both of their lives a little frustrating. Well, one might argue that's why we have things like the Fourth Amendment. That's why we have basic privacy protections. Sometimes it should be a little frustrating for police to get access to information. They should have to show that they have a good reason to do so. There should be judicial oversight when they do. But this is a case where these companies care more about making their lives easier and kind of getting this out of their hands than they do about protecting their customers' safety and security. And I think that, especially in light of this huge bombshell story about Facebook's data practices being used by Cambridge Analytica to collect millions of people's information, that really underscores the reality that these companies are not protecting our data already, and it's preposterous that they would be pushing for a bill to make that data even less secure and available to law enforcement when they clearly aren't even protecting it from actors that aren't supposed to have it in the first place. And on that story, I would also just add that this is not a new problem. And it's not a partisan issue either. This is not just about Trump and Cambridge Analytica. Democrats have been caught using information like this in the past as well. This is really an issue of a company that's built its entire business model on collecting and vacuuming up massive amounts of information that give incredibly intimate details about people's lives and then packaging that into a product to sell to advertisers. Whether those advertisers are selling you a candidate or selling you a beauty product, they're using your own data against you, and that's really what this is about.
Yeah, and it's pretty astonishing. We're talking with Evan Greer, campaign director at fightforthefuture.org, about who has just been relentless working on net neutrality and other issues associated with it, net privacy. Who are the principal? First of all, did the Cloud Act originate in the House or the Senate, and who are the principal supporters of it?
So the Cloud Act is sort of a relatively new bill, and the reason that we're talking about it now is because its sponsors are pushing for it to end up in the omnibus, the must-pass spending bill that was expected to be unveiled as early as last night. It's now been delayed by the snow, and Congress is still kicking it around. So it's a bit complicated. Many lawmakers haven't taken a public position on it yet. Probably a bunch of them haven't even read it yet. But they're considering sticking it in the must-pass spending bill as sort of a bargaining chip in the way that they do in these moments around these omnibus legislation. So the folks to talk to about this, if you want to make your voice heard, is very much leadership in both the Senate and the House. We need to keep this out of the omnibus bill. They're going to stick it in there if they think it's a good bargaining chip, if they think it's going to get them votes from moderate Democrats or centrist Republicans. So what we need to do is tell them this is controversial. There's people that oppose this. So calling particularly Senate and House leadership, but really all of our lawmakers right now to just make some noise on the Hill, that there's real opposition to this from the privacy community, from human rights groups, from free speech and freedom of expression groups, but really just from average people who don't want their data to be accessible to police in other countries without proper judicial oversight. Basic protections afforded to us by the Fourth Amendment that should be available to everyone that uses the Internet.
So when you call 202-224-3121, the switchboard for Congress, in addition to asking for your 2 senators and your member of the House of Representatives, you could also ask for the Republican leadership, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell's offices, and the Democratic leadership, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer's offices. Is that right?
That's right. You should, and you should tweet at them as well. I think, this is happening right now. They are making this decision, about whether to include this in the omnibus now. And I think, a really important argument, even if you haven't made up your mind about this bill or you think your representative hasn't, they should recognize that any type of change to our online privacy at a moment like this, when there's this huge national debate happening around these companies' data practices, should clearly happen in the open with real, honest debate about the impact that it's going to have on all of us. It shouldn't be done behind closed doors as part of one of these horse trading sessions that go into these omnibus bills.
Right, and it shouldn't be done just because, as a member of Congress, you took a bunch of money from, Google or Microsoft or whatever, these tech giants. Evan Greer.
That's exactly right.
You are doing God's work, Evan. Thank you so much.
Doing my best.
Campaign Director, fightforthefuture.org is the website. We'll be back. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with more of the news of the day, your calls and my thoughts on all of the above right after this. And welcome back. Mark in Valley, Washington. Hey, Mark, what's on your mind?
How you doing? I'm kind of dovetailing on that gentleman, I think his name was Duran's call, where he was saying that they're so afraid. I don't think it's fear. I think it's fascism. I think there's and I'm not saying all the police are like this, but I think there's a certain faction of them that just don't look at them as people, as equals.
Yeah. Well, I think, my experience, having been a licensed private detective for 2 years and having gone through courses at the Georgia Police Academy where I was surrounded by cops for weeks, is that it seemed to me, and this is just my personal experience, hanging out with these guys at the Georgia Police Academy, was that about a third of them were Dudley Do-Right types. They were straight shooters, they were Eagle Scouts. They were people who really wanted to serve their community and thought law enforcement was a great way to do it, and were just very excited to be there. About a third of them, a second third of them, were guys who just figured, hey, it's a decent job. You got a union, you got a pension, you can retire after 20, 25 years with and have a decent retirement. It's nowhere, everybody thinks it's a big deal, but it's nowhere near as dangerous as being a roofer, for example, or a garbage collector. They die on the job much higher rates than police officers. And then the remaining third were the people who, I make jokes about the small penis gun club and guys who are compensating with their big guns. I think it goes even way beyond that. These are people who are drawn to policing because they are given the power of life and death over other people, and they love lording that power over other people. And I was on the receiving end of that at times, and I was expected to be on the giving end of it at times when we were going through the training. And it was pretty shocking to me. And that 1/3, in my experience in Georgia, in the police academy, it might be, 3/4 in some places. It might be 5% in other places, But that 1/3 that I saw, those are the people that are really, really destroying our police departments, frankly, in my opinion. They're destroying the reputation of our cops. It's a cancer. It's a psychological cancer, Mark.
Well, just like with what we got going on with Trump, it comes from the leadership down.
Yeah.
If you got leadership that condones it, then you're going to have a police force that you're going to have more cops that act that way.
Yeah, you're right.
And
you're right.
You get these guys to where, I went back to a Christmas party, and one of my good friend's older adult daughters, was dating a cop, and there were some cops there. And you get these guys where they feel comfortable and they get a few drinks in them, they start talking. And that's how I came up with this opinion, okay? Let's just put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that they're fascists. And fascism, of course, is a dimension of authoritarianism. And authoritarianism, most authoritarians are actually not authoritarian leaders, they're authoritarian followers. And they want an authoritarian leader like Donald Trump or Vladimir Putin or whatnot. And or Erdogan or Duterte in the Philippines. They're looking for strongman leaders. But they, as authoritarian followers, they're very much what in business is referred to as the kiss up, kick down personality. They kiss up to the people who have more power than them. They kick below them in the face. They kick the people who have less power than them. And in other countries where they pay police really well and they have really high standards for policing, like in Northern Europe, such people don't become police. And that's a challenge that we have here. Mark, thank you for the call. It's an important issue. It really is. And it affects the quality of all of our lives. We'll be right back. We had our poll on Facebook yesterday. Our poll question was, Facebook shareholders may also want to quiz Mark Zuckerberg over the Cambridge Analytica data use. Is this the beginning of the end for Facebook? 51% say yes, Facebook is out of control and must be stopped. 16% say yes, time for them to go out of business. I'm surprised by these numbers. 23% no, Facebook is too big to fail. 10% no, none of this is Facebook's fault. 1% I couldn't live without Facebook. Fascinating. Some of the comments. Scott, yes, it's time for them to go out of business. They are being used to squash dissent and formulate conformity of opinions. Amorose Moon says, no, this is none of Facebook's fault. I blame the people who don't read the privacy notifications on those online surveys and quizzes. And Lemoyne Castle says, no, Facebook is too big to fail. Says, not the beginning of the end. This is the end of the beginning for Facebook. One way or another, Facebook will be regulated. The stockholders should ask Zuckerberg what he plans to do about that. I agree with that. I think that's a really, really important point. And one of the things when I was sharing information with you earlier about Cambridge Analytica, maybe it was yesterday, and one of the clips that was played on Channel 4 News in Europe, in the UK, excuse me, where Alexander Nix, the head of Cambridge Analytica, is saying it doesn't matter if the news, the meme, the idea that you're promoting, it doesn't matter if it's true, just so long as it's believed. It only has to be believed. Truth doesn't matter. And so they found a bunch of memes that people, whether they were true or not, or even logical or not, people would like sign up for, you know, build the wall, drain the swamp. And this became the Trump campaign. And so now somebody asked Bob Corker about this, you know, will the Republicans be able to get out from underneath Trump? Why is it that Republicans across the country are not speaking out about Trump the way that Bob Corker is? And Corker said it's more than strong, it's tribal in nature. This is in the Washington Post. It's more than strong, it's tribal in nature. People who tell me way out on the trail, who are out on the trail, say, look, people don't care about issues anymore. He's talking about other Republican politicians. Look, they don't care about issues anymore. They want to know if you're with Trump or not. He's created a cult of personality. This is not a good thing. Cults of personality are not a good thing. James in Spokane, Washington. Hey, James, what's on your mind today?
Morituri te salutamus, y'all.
I'm sorry?
Morituri te salutamus. We who are about to die salute you.
Okay. I didn't understand it, but thank you.
Yeah, I heard yesterday a report, I think it was on Free Speech Television, but I'm not sure. It says the CIA is fielding Democratic candidates for Congress.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know anything about that, James.
Okay. On to one more point. There's a Dr. Gabor Sante, Gaborsante.
It's Gabor Mate, M-A-T-E. I know him.
Okay.
I know him.
Okay. It's focus.
If we're talking about the same guy.
Maybe. His shtick is the focus needs to be on harm reduction concerning drug abuse.
Yes.
Drug use.
Yeah, that's Gabor Mate. He's a psychiatrist or psychologist out of British Columbia, as I recall, out of Vancouver, BC.
Yeah, I think he is Canadian. You're right. Points out abstinence does not work.
Right.
It's never worked.
Right.
There's a 50% relapse rate within 1 year.
Yep. And the reason why is because we are wired to get high. And it's not just humans. They're virtually every mammal out there, and birds as well, will seek out fermented foods in order to get drunk. They will take psychoactive plants, and they know how much to take and how much not to take so as not to overdose in order to get high. It's built into us. It's why we consume alcohol. It's why we consume caffeine. And it's why we consume tobacco. The problem with tobacco, of course, is that you only get high from it for the first week or two you use it. And by the end of that time, you are so badly addicted, even though you no longer get high, you feel so terrible when you stop that you keep using it. But, you know, yeah, we're wired for this. And so the challenge for our society has to be harm reduction, right? How do we, if we're going to get high, how do we do it in a way that doesn't kill us? 50,000 people a year in the United States die from alcohol abuse. Nobody dies from marijuana abuse. That seems to me like a fairly clear argument for example, decriminalization of marijuana. But I'm not sure if that's where you were going, James. Back to you.
Yeah, basically, Tom, it seems to me that alcohol and tobacco are about the hardest. I mean, people have a right to use them, but my God, give me a choice legally of something less harmful to me.
Yes.
Less harmful to society.
Yep. Yep,
And
I completely agree, James. And I don't think tobacco should be legal. I think it is such a deadly drug. You know, and I'm in favor of legalizing basically all drugs. But or let me rephrase that. I think that tobacco should not be allowed. Yeah, I don't think it should be legal. I don't think it should be criminalized. There's a difference. It's like, you know, you can use in many jurisdictions, in Washington D.C. for example, you can use pot, you can possess pot, but you can't sell pot, and so there's no commercial business for it. Now, you know, I think you should be able to sell pot because I think it's a low harm drug, but I think tobacco is a high harm drug. So rather than busting the users, we should be busting the people who are selling it.
Amen. One more point, Tom, on these billionaires. Okay, they're neurotic and psychotic. If their end game is to get every dollar on the planet in their pocket, everything of value on the planet in their pocket, what then?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, James, I've known a few billionaires in my life, and the ones that I've known have been progressive billionaires, and they've been decent people who just, you know, really hit a winning formula for making money. And they give a lot of their money to organizations and charities that are working to raise their taxes, and that's fine with them. But the conservative billionaires, the ones who are just, you know, every penny, I got to have it, you know, I only have $50 billion, I got to have $100 billion, you know, and who are meddling in our politics in these huge, huge ways. I think that much of that is probably coming out of hoarding syndrome, this obsessive compulsive disorder where the object of the compulsion is, instead of newspapers or empty tin cans, is is money, you know, and they're hoarding money. I mean, this is hoarding syndrome. It's not a good thing. James, I got to run, but thank you for the call. Well said. And Gabe Armonte is brilliant. He's written a couple of really, really good books, and great guy. It's been a couple of years since we've talked, but back when I was working on attention deficit disorder in a big way, so is he, and he's a good guy. We'll be back. It's 28 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
In fact, Gabe Armonte has been a guest on this program in the past. You can probably Google it. Anyhow, we'll be back with more of your calls right after this. It's the Free Speech TV membership drive. Today is Wednesday, and we are about $24,000 behind in what we need to be raising to keep this network on the air, to keep the lights on, to keep the electrons flowing, to keep this show in your home. And so any amount of help right now is really appreciated and really does help. A lot of small contributions is basically how we make this thing happen. You know, thousands and thousands of people giving $10, $20, $30, $50, something like that, $100, $200. There's a few very large donors, but they're few and far between. We had one $5,000 donor on the first day of the campaign, and thank you very much to that donor. But you know, that's it so far. I mean, the vast majority, there have been a few $1,000 donors who want to come have lunch with Louise and me, and other than that, it is the small donors that make up this show, which is a good thing and a healthy thing. You know, it's like diversity in an ecosystem. You know, it's more broadly based, so it's more resilient. So please, if you're part of the 98% who have never donated to Free Speech TV, who have never joined Free Speech TV, who haven't become part of our family, take this opportunity to do so. This is a really pivotal time for progressive media. Conservative media has always had the backing of right-wing billionaires and big corporations, at least since the Powell memo in the early 70s. And increasingly, national public radio and public broadcasting systems are being taken over by right-wing billionaires who donate money to them, who dictate their programming content. David Koch, for example, killed a special about him that was supposed to be on PBS. And now you got right-wing think tanks that are constantly popping up on NPR all over the place, hyper-right politicians and whatnot. And there's no real balancing voices. How often do you hear Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren on NPR? Very rarely, if ever. So please call now, 877-378-8669, or Mark Pocan, for that matter. How often do you hear him on NPR? Please call, or anybody from the Congressional Progressive Caucus. They're just like, you know, not good for advertisers or something. Is that the deal? 877-378-8669. Please call now. With a $30 gift, you get your choice of one of 4 bumper stickers, the Free Speech TV bumper sticker, the This Is Not Normal bumper sticker, the Elect a Clown and Expect a Circus bumper sticker, and Thom Hartmann University. With a $60 gift, you get the lapel pin from the Human Rights Campaign, Love Conquers Hate. With a $72 gift, you get all 4 of those bumper stickers that I mentioned just a moment ago. With a $120 gift, you get an autographed copy of my book, Unequal Protection, plus an autographed photo of me, the picture that Louise took with her camera in Cuba, in front of a picture of Fidel Castro. With that's with a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt. You get Building a Just World on the front and Standing in Unity on the back. You get the Human Rights Campaign Love Conquers Hate lapel pin. You get an autographed copy of my book, Unequal Protection. This is my book about how the Supreme Court basically took away our rights and enthroned corporations as the legal rulers of America. And you get Bonnie Siegler's book, Signs of Resistance, A Visual History of Protest in the United States. That's with a $240 gift. With a $360 gift, you get the autographed Thom Hartmann photo in Cuba. You get the autographed book by me, Unequal Protection. You get the book, When They Call You a Terrorist. This is the story of the lives of Black Lives Matter people by Patrice Kahn-Kollers.
You get the book Signs of Resistance, A Visual History of Protest in America by Bonnie Siegler. You get a 1-year subscription to our podcast, our audio podcast, which you can listen to anytime, anywhere, on pretty much any device. We sell those over at thomhartmann.com. It's one of the ways we support the show. We are giving them away with a $360 gift to Free Speech TV. You get a year's podcasts. And you also get all 4 of the bumper stickers that we mentioned earlier. This Is Not Normal, Elect a Clown, Expect a Circus, the Free Speech TV one, and the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $480 gift, and just with a $480 gift, we've got a special treat. When Louise and I were in Cuba, we took a lot of video of just all kinds of cool stuff. This is all done by me with a little handheld camera that I picked up at the store just before we left. And it's not going to be available anywhere else. We're not going to put it on the air. It's not going to be for sale. It's the only way you can get this is with a $480 gift to Free Speech TV now, and 877-378-8669. In addition to that DVD, you will also get my book Unequal Protection, my book about the Supreme Court. You get the book When They Call You a Terrorist, Lives of Black Lives Matter by Patrice Kahn-Kullers. You get the book Signs of Resistance, A Visual History of Protest in America by Bonnie Siegler. And you get the gray Free Speech TV t-shirt. And with a $1,000 gift, if you call now, 877-378-8669, and make a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. You can drop by the studio here. We had a few people last Friday, which is great. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Interesting piece over at Think Progress by Judd Legume about Karen McDougal. Karen McDougal is the former Playboy bunny, I guess is the phrase, pinup girl, whatever, who had a very, very similar experience to Stormy Daniels. He writes, in some respects, McDougal's story is similar to Daniels. Like Daniels, she met Trump at the 2006 golf tournament in Lake Tahoe. Trump later wined and dined both women at the Beverly Hills Hotel. He promised them both apartments. And then as Election Day approached, both women were paid to keep quiet. And they were both represented by the same lawyer, Keith Davidson. Here's where it gets interesting, though. Stormy Daniels is alleging that Trump didn't sign the document, therefore it's not a real document. That may or may not fly. But what Karen McDougal is saying is that she sold her story about her affair with Donald Trump to the National Enquirer, or to the parent company, the National Enquirer, which is owned by David Pecker, I believe his first name is David, who is an old friend of Donald Trump's. And he paid her $150,000 and then killed the story. And what she's alleging is that what that was a campaign donation to Donald Trump's campaign. In other words, keeping her quiet, killing her story to the tune of $150,000 was supporting the Trump campaign to the tune of $150,000. And if the Federal Election Commission decides that that is true, then A, Trump is in big trouble, and Mr. Pecker might be as well, and B, in all probability, Karen McDougal's story is going to get out there in a big way, and so, you know, it looks like Trump's past is catching up with him, all because he wanted to run for president. He didn't want to be president, but he wanted to run for president to build the equity of his brand. Brilliant. Brenda in Newport News, Virginia. Hey, Brenda, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm great. What's up?
Well, in deference to the gentleman that you were talking to earlier about Donald Trump's war on drugs, he's saying that he's going after drug lords, but Trump has clearly said drug pushers, not drug lords. And we know that means that there's going to be more in black and brown folks that are going to be at risk.
But it's always been that way.
Go ahead.
It's always been that way. I mean, the war on drugs, even, you know, Richard Nixon's guy, Ehrlichman, just came right out and confessed that this was, you know, a way to shut down the anti-war hippies and people of color.
Oh, absolutely. But let's pretend for a minute that he really means driving kingpins. If so, it might backfire on him because it's going to lead right back to the source of his current problems, and that is Russia. Because because
How's that?
Bratva, which is the Russian mafia, is the biggest crime syndicate in the world. And they have been dealing with, well, they've got the lock on the heroin coming out of Afghanistan, the cocaine coming out of Colombia, and he keeps talking about Mexico sending us their worst, when just last summer, 33 mafia affiliates and members were arrested in New York by the FBI, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and NYPD for extortion, racketeering, illegal gambling, firearm offenses, narcotics trafficking, wire fraud, credit card fraud, identity theft, fraud on casino slot machines using electronic hacking devices, and
Good
so
grief,
on.
Brenda.
So,
Was this the Russian mob that was busted in New York, or the American mob?
in New York. It was busted in New York.
And
But
it was the Russian mob.
yes.
Okay.
And so, and I guess what I'm saying is he's trying to provide a distraction by, again, pointing at Mexico. But, but he's using the wrong tool, because it's going to point right back to Russia.
Yeah.
If they honestly go after the Russian the drug trafficking kingpin.
And I can't speak to whether the Russian mob owns the heroin and cocaine trade, although it doesn't sound impossible. In fact, it sounds quite credible. But the other thing is that the thing that's actually killing people right now in the United States is illegal fentanyl. Fentanyl is 100 times stronger than heroin, and fentanyl is being manufactured in China and shipped into the United States. And I don't think that anything could be manufactured in China and shipped out of China to the United States without the Chinese government knowing about it.
Correct.
So,
and your point earlier, though, about, and frankly, people in this country are being killed more by, as you pointed out, legal drugs than anything else. Not just the cigarettes or tobacco, but the opioids themselves, which are, as you said, like through the legal drugs that people are taking out of drug cabinets and selling on the street.
yeah, and there's this family that owns the company that sells OxyContin. I forget the name of the family, but they're worth hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion now, as a result of selling this product that as a painkiller is a really great painkiller, but it was so aggressively marketed that it basically created a market for addicts. It created addicts and created a market for addicts. Brenda, excellent points all. Thank you for the call. Taha in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Hey, Taha, thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
Hey, Tom, big fan. I love your show.
Thank you.
I just wanted to comment about the terrorist who has been terrorizing Texas for a while and killed himself yesterday, I guess.
You're talking the bomber terrorist,
Right,
white guy
right,
conservative,
right.
self-described
And I was
anti-abortion
reading
conservative, yes.
I was reading CBS News about that guy online, and it read Maury, who is the Austin police chief, said the authorities, did not know why the man who is white was engaged in bombing. I was like, really? I mean, there has been a lot of incidents.
And he's
where,
not just
white
bombing,
people-
Taha. He's bombing black folks. He's a white guy. And
Right,
it's not like he's picking names out of the phone book. I mean, there's something going on here, and I have a feeling that it can track back to this whole bizarre right-wing racial thing. Yeah, Taha, excellent point. Thank you for the call and for making it. Russ in Portland, Oregon. Hey, Russ, thanks for listening to X-Ray FM. What's up?
Yeah, a little change of topic here, Tom.
Sure.
If I say to you AUMF, does that ring a bell for you?
Yeah, authorization to use military force is what it's an acronym for.
That's exactly what it is. And
it's unconstitutional, in my opinion. The Constitution clearly says we can't use military force without a declaration of war from Congress.
Exactly. Section 8, Article 1 is what you're referring to there.
Yep.
And I did not know about this until I had been calling around to my two senators to try and find out whether or not Trump would need any authorization from Congress to go to war with Iran, which I believe
he would need an AUMF unless he could prove that the AUMF that was issued for Afghanistan and Iraq, which, by the way, both Bush, Obama, and Trump, all three of these presidents have used that AUMF, which was specifically, to the groups that attacked us on 9/11 and people who support them, have said, okay, well, that group that attacked us was Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda has morphed into ISIS. And so now we can go into any country in the world where there's ISIS. I mean, they're stretching this thing to the point where it's about to break. And there is no connection between Shia Iran and Sunni ISIS, Sunni Al-Qaeda, Sunni Saudi Arabia. No connection. In fact, they are on opposite, they hate each other. And so I don't see how he could use an authorization to use military force against 9/11 affiliated people to invade Iran. I just don't see it.
Well, according to Barbara Lee, who was the only person in the House of Representatives who had the gear to vote against this
on the Afghanistan vote, yes.
Right. Well, she says it's being used as basically a blank check to wage war, anywhere without debate.
That's absolutely true.
Now, pardon?
That's absolutely true.
Yeah, and I'm really. If we get into a war with Iran, I mean, it's the beginning of the end, in my opinion.
Yep.
This will be a disaster.
If we get into a war with Iran, there's going to be at least 1 billion people dead within a decade.
Yeah. I think it could also spark. I'm really concerned about the potential for civil war in this country, and I'm not the only one. I mean, Carl Bernstein has said as much. Jill Wine-Banks has said as much. This is not just me in Portland, Oregon, popping off. And I remember when we went to war with Iraq, which was a fiasco, and the rednecks in this area just went absolutely bonkers. I mean, I saw it, and I've already been, had one redneck blogger, threaten me with civil war if I don't vote for Trump. And in my opinion, the Trump being president makes civil war in this country more likely, not less likely.
I think so too, and I think it's that tribal nature of his appeal that Cambridge Analytica helped them so carefully craft, and that they have exploited so well to the point that Bob Corker now says the issues are irrelevant. It's all, are you with him or against him? It's a cult of personality.
Yeah, which.
And God forbid, if he, well, not, but if Mueller comes out with an indictment against Trump or members of his family or both, and Trump is looking at the possibility of jail time or impeachment or the loss of his financial empire, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if he reached out to Iran or North Korea, not reached out to in the sense that you might think, but if he were to attack Iran or South Korea in order to provoke a war, in order to become a wartime president, in order to distract us from his crisis, and to shut down the investigation and gain the emergency powers that a president has during time of war. And it wouldn't surprise me if he even provoked an attack against us in order to justify it. And I realize that that's like really climbing out on the edge of a conspiracy theory limb there. But I think it's a very, very real possibility, and I think that we need to be very, very conscious of it.
I don't think you're off base at all, Tom.
Yeah.
I think you're spot on.
Well, let's hope I'm wrong. Let's hope I'm wrong. But this man seems to me to have no morals, no moral compass, no conscience, and certainly no regard for other human beings. And that scares the heck out of me. Russ, thank you for the call.
Just one more thing.
Yeah, we're out of time, Russ. I'm sorry. Call back again. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of your calls in the news of the day in just a minute. And welcome back, Brian in Dubuque, Iowa. Hey, Brian, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom. Thank you. I have a couple things two topics I wanted to mention real quick. They're debating on the House, in this House, allowing terminally ill people to use experimental drugs. I hope that happens. I'd like to know what drug they gave President Carter that cured him of his cancer.
That was not an experimental drug. That it was a biological, and it is in the marketplace.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And then what else? The other thing I wanted to say, if I just want to throw a tool in your toolbox, an extra tool in your toolbox, if I may.
Sure.
Julio Rivera, when he said that your argument, when you said we should throw tobacco guys, we should give them the death penalty.
Tongue in cheek, of course, but yeah.
Yes, exactly. I understand. I'm learning, but I understand that. What you could have said to him is, if it were illegal, people would be killing each other over tobacco.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Because he was saying it was a ridiculous argument because fentanyl is illegal and the cartels and whatever else and are killing each other because of the illegal market, which is exactly why you don't want to have an illegal market.
Right.
You want to have it legalized and have it make it a health issue and don't put people in prison. And
well, this is where there's a difference between criminalizing and legalizing.
Exactly.
And I was trying to draw that distinction for the reasons of basically industry, as it were. If tobacco maintains its current status as legal, as fully legal and saleable, then you've got a $1 billion industry devoted to convincing us to use more of that product.
No.
On the other hand, if you were to say, we're not going to arrest anybody for possessing tobacco. You can grow it in your backyard, and in most of the United States, probably you can grow tobacco. May not be the best, but all it requires is a nice summer. That then you wouldn't have a $1 billion industry committed to promoting it. I think we would go if we were to say that tobacco cannot be legally sold in the United States. It can be merely legally grown or possessed. I think that we would go from having a 50 or 60 million tobacco addicts to having 5 or 10 million tobacco addicts.
I'm with you, Tom. I'm with you.
So, and I realize that I speak in favor of legalizing drugs. What I really mean is decriminalizing drugs. Just like in Portugal, they said, we're not going to throw you in jail for heroin anymore, but you can't sell it. We will throw you in jail for selling it, and that's a real important distinction, I think. Or cocaine or whatever it may be. So
thanks,
does that?
Tom.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Brian. And your point about the cartels arising is a really important one. That's the lesson that the United States learned in the 1930s when we first, did prohibition of alcohol. We made alcohol illegal, and then, a few years later, that was, by the way, by constitutional amendment. Think of what a huge, heavy lift that was, and it was mostly a women's movement to get alcohol banned in the United States. And then, a few years later to get it unbanned. But what that did during that period of time during Prohibition was it created these gangs, these killer gangs, that just were robbing, raping, and pillaging America with Tommy guns and whatnot and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, how do you figure this out? How do you work this out so that you're not creating the killer gangs, but you're also not creating the modern day version of the tobacco industry? And I think it really depends on the drug. Hey, Scott, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, I don't mean to be a conspiracy theorist here, but I also don't want to be a coincidence theorist. The Austin bomber Condit had connections to Eric Prince.
How so?
his family worked for Amway.
Oh,
Amway is owned by the DeVos family.
Right.
Lots of people work for Amway.
Right.
Lots of people work for Amway, but not everybody's son is a mad bomber.
That's a pretty thin stick there, Scott.
It is, sure, obviously.
That's like, I have a connection to the Koch brothers because I use, Georgia Pacific towels.
No, but that's not good enough. That's not good enough. In this day and age, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yeah. I don't think that you can say that the bomber. I think what you can say about the bomber is that he's an anti-abortion right-winger, who favors the death penalty.
Homeschooled with a connection to the DeVos family.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's not good enough.
All right.
It's not good enough.
You got it, Scott. You got it. Michael in Hill City, Kansas. Hey, Michael, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Tom.
Hey, Michael.
I just want to. Yeah, can you hear me?
Just fine.
Okay. I just want to ask you a question. What has Trump done for the veterans? I'm a Vietnam vet. I've told you that before.
Right.
And there's Vietnam vets out here and other vets who from Afghanistan and Iraq who are trying to raise their families and pay their bills. And Donald Trump said, I'm going to be the best president there was for the veterans. I'm going to take care of our veterans. And they can build hospitals, but there's some of us who don't need a hospital. We just need help and payment for what we did when we were over there fighting for this country. I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
I can tell you, I at the level of what's in his heart or soul or what his actual plans are, I don't know specifically, but one thing I do know, the current head of the Veterans Administration, and I'm sorry I'm forgetting his name, was it Shulkin? But in any case, the current head of the Veterans Administration believes that the VA should maintain their VA hospitals and their, because the Veterans Administration is basically socialized medicine. It's very much like the National Health Service in Great Britain. The government owns it. The government owns the hospitals. The government owns the facilities. And the physicians and nurses and whatnot who work there are government employees. That is not the case with single-payer health care like Medicare. That's not the case with countries like Canada that have single payer. That is the case with England that has a government-owned health system, the National Health Service. And so what Trump is trying to do is get this guy who runs the VA right now, to get him out. He's trying to replace him. He's trying to humiliate him out of office. And the guy that he wants to replace him with is, and again, I don't have the name at the tip of my tongue, I'm sorry, but I'll see if I can track this down tomorrow and talk about it on the air. But the guy he wants to replace him with wants to privatize the VA, wants to turn the Veterans Administration over to United Healthcare or, some big hospital group or whatever, so that, the capitalists can make money off people like you, Michael, rather than simply running something that is there for the benefit of the veterans. And that does not seem a very veteran-friendly thing to me. I realize that the Republicans are all in favor of it, and they say, oh, everything will get better if you privatize it. But history does not seem to indicate that that's the case. Make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
I understand. I think it's pitiful. And one more point I wanted to make real quick is I want to thank all the white people who are standing up with and marching with people of color in this country.
Amen.
They're going unnoticed, and I think it's great what they're doing.
Yeah, white people are waking. I mean, black people have known for a long, long time what the real story is going on here. But there are white people are waking up, and it's a good thing. Michael, thank you for that comment. And if you're going to call your members of Congress at 202-225-3121, call them and say, don't privatize the VA and don't put somebody in charge of the VA who wants to privatize it, because that's the Trump agenda right now. And it'll be a disaster, in my opinion. Michael, thank you for the call. Rich in Mission Viejo, California. Hey, Rich, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Everything you say is spot on. I mean, when you privatize things, it becomes more expensive. Your idea about Trump maybe starting a war is a real possibility. But what I wanted to talk about originally was about cigarettes. Okay, about 400,000 people a year die from cigarette smoke. Another between 38,000 and 40,000 die from secondhand smoke. Not only the amount of people that die from drugs is a fraction of that. Okay, and the amount of money that goes into health care, okay, to take care of these people from cigarettes.
Oh, it's costing us over $500 billion a year. It's mind-boggling, you know, the cost of these things. Rich, I'm sorry to cut you off, but we're hitting the end of the show here. But your point was really well made. Thank you for the call and for saying it. I think, you know, if you want to have a conversation about drugs, we need to start with cigarettes. It's just that simple. Thanks so much for being with us today. Another fascinating day. You know, elect a clown, expect a circus. The circus rolls on, tragically. Anyhow, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Get out there, get active, tag, you're it. We'll see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
From United Nations headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your...
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242
or visit tomsbeets.com.